Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
God's had to build my own family. I hate your son. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
God's had to build my own family. I hate your son. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
God's had to build my own family. I ain't your son. I ain't your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You and whose army, princess? You and whose army?
Oh shit. What is up, everybody? This is Silver Spook. Whoa. What's up? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook live stream. Let me make my head a little smaller. Yeah. Before I forget, don't forget everything that we do here is supported by the, of course, sales of the game Neofeud that you just watched a trailer of. Also, you can support us by becoming a patron. Just sharing the stream around, direct StreamYard's donations, and yeah, we're gonna be talking about a cyberpunk dude, and so I should probably, not William Gibson, although I did interview William Gibson, but William Gibson actually has worked with this person, in fact, and yeah. So speaking of cyberpunk, though, but Neofeud is of course a cyberpunk adventure game. So if you are into cyberpunk and adventure games, indigenous created cyberpunk games, or you just want to help out Native Hawaiian people trying to stop the illegal occupation, ongoing attempt to destroy our language, our culture, and our way of life here in the U.S. military-industrial complex occupied Hawaii, consider supporting us in any of those ways that I just suggested. But we will today be talking about a very good, not a good friend of mine, but William Gibson has directly worked with Keanu, of course, in Johnny Mnemonic. I haven't really gone specifically off on cyberpunk related stuff in a little bit, which is fine. I mean, I spent a lot of the last several years doing just nonstop cyberpunk streams, but The Matrix Resurrection is coming out soon. I don't think I need this here. Sorry about that. Yeah, Matrix Resurrections is coming out soon, so I figure when is, it's probably a good time to get back onto the old, flogging the dead cybernetically enhanced horse that is cyberpunk. But we're actually going to talk about Keanu Reeves, but also we're going to talk about Hawaii at the same time. I know there's a lot of very important issues. I was just on the Professor Flowers stream, which is another YouTube channel that you should check out. And I'm going to be on a panel later on today with some very important folks, including Luna Oi, our Vietnamese comrade. Danny Haifong is going to join us, another Vietnamese, half Vietnamese diaspora journalist, very important left, one of few actual journalists reporting on critical, speaking of empire, dealing with directly with the U.S. empire and its all of its racist capitalist forms. Danny Haifong will be with us. We'll also have Professor Flowers will join us. So Professor Flowers is a black content creator on YouTube. And we're going to be racism is one of the topics we're going to be dealing with, so that's very important. Racism, empire, and how they're working together is probably it was a little bit. I don't have all the flyers and things for it as I usually do, but it just happened to work out that the schedules seem to align for Luna this week. So that'll be later on today. So myself, Luna Oi, Danny Haifong, Professor Flowers, and Lost Sue, who is an indigenous content creator, mostly on Twitch. But Lost Sue is a survivor of the 60 Scoop and Canada's ongoing genocide. And the fight for the Vai, the Hawaiian word for freshwater is Vai, that the U.S. military at Red Hill is currently continuing to poison us and our own troops, as I've been speaking of frequently. Process is continuing. The fight is growing. There are more and more actions, and direct actions are being called for, not just voting, thankfully, to not ask, as I said, not ask the U.S. military and the U.S. empire to stop its military-led just horror and atrocities it's committing, including poisoning of babies, children, dogs are dying. The capacity for Oahu to even be inhabited is in question right now, as gasoline. There are homes of Native Hawaiians that the military troops are getting put up in hotels and families. It's horrible what's happening to them, but the U.S. military is paying for the families and children to stay in hotels. Local Hawaiian families are left to fend for themselves as they're literally just sitting on a toilet seat. They're getting rashes on their legs just from sitting on a toilet seat because the water in their toilet bowl is so full of gasoline. The fumes are giving them rashes. They just can't live. They're just homeless. So the United States military continues to make Native Hawaiians, Keanu Reeves' ancestral, his family, homeless. So this is all connected, and that's what I do. What I try to do, I think, is try to, I call it, we don't want to visualize some brand new unknown solar punk future. I would say that, I often say, people in the West, they don't know what it is to live in a normal human civilization. And so what we want to do is we want to return to, not go back to 500 years ago, but we want to return to a more even keel of what human, sentient civilizations, not necessarily only human, but, just normal human ecology, what the Kanaka Maoli, the peoples of Yajo, Alkebulan, Abiyala, Pachamama's children, I should say, and Papa and Wakea's children, that is we of the Pacific, that we have done for tens of thousands of years. But we want to do that with rocket ships, warp technology, and quantum supercomputers that are an octillion times faster than anything that the West has been able to, the Western barbarists have been able to produce. And this is all connected. And so that's what I try to do is not get the stream banned, because I said, in my title, if you put too much indigenous, quote unquote, political issues in your topic, and this is one of the things that has to be decompartmentalized, which is the what China calls whole process democracy. It's also called whole process civilization, I would argue. Whole process existence, whole process ecology, whole process. And so what the West actually has is fractional process democracy, or fictional process democracy, or through a glass darkly process democracy. It's called the dark glass of your voting booth that tells you that you live in a democracy with a star-spangled banner and a dead white war criminal in front of it at elementary school. And then you fill in a little bubble. You put it into a machine that's rigged by Pete Buttigieg's funders. And then you come out the other side, and then you think you live in a democracy, and then your life gets worse. And that's because you live in a tiny fragment process democracy. You don't have a whole process. You have small hearts and small process or non-process, and you're run by these kind of people. unfortunately. And so what we want to return to is what Keanu Reeves' Hawaiian Chinese grandmother came from, which was what? Pop quiz. Which is what? An actual existing socialist civilization, technologically modern, anti-imperialist, racial and economic equality, the world's first universal healthcare system. That's where Keanu Reeves' Chinese Hawaiian grandma actually comes from. You know, what Sun Yat-sen and Kalakaua, who now the Hawaiian and Chinese, and the Chinese that were based on the Hawaiian, most advanced civilization that the earth had ever produced. That's why Keanu Reeves is the only uncanceled 90s star. That's why he keeps showing up everywhere. Is because, I would argue, whatever small bits of Hawaii lived through that Torontonian racist survival of Toronto's anti-indigenous. Keanu Reeves looks like an indigenous person. I have many friends, and Holly knows many people that are indigenous in Canada. Keanu Reeves spent a lot of his early life in Canada. He looks like a native indigenous person, First Nations person in Canada. He survived. He doesn't talk about it, but you know, this is the way that, I don't know if you know this, but Canada has 50% of the prison population is indigenous women in Canada. Indigenous women. That doesn't count even the men. 50% of Canada's prison population. They are like less than 4% of the population. Over 50% of the prison population. Keanu Reeves suffered anti-indigenous and anti-Asian racism in Canada. Vancouver and Toronto, but Vancouver has the highest rate of anti-Asian racism in all of North America. In a place that has escalating anti-Asian racism, Canada, the highest rate. Keanu Reeves looks like an Asian and a First Nations person. And, you know, I mean, I don't even know if he even realizes this, but, you know, that you have to have suffered that in Canada. But you don't, you know, we don't often talk, we as Asia, I am Asian and Pacific Islander, you know, like Keanu Reeves. We don't often talk about this stuff. Well, I take that back. I talk about this stuff all the goddamn time because I don't have time to try to get a cut of any Western capitalist, barbaristic, failing shitscape. I don't have time for that. I'm too busy trying to stop my family from dying and my culture from being eradicated by the United States. I don't have time. However, a lot of other Asian and Pacific Islanders, they don't necessarily bring this up too much because you're trying to survive in your Chinatown that I'm from, right? And it's hard. You know, we're lucky that we are on the big island of Hawaii and we are in the position that we're in. I don't have to work for any corporation, university of the United States or Canada, or any of the Western university like Adrian Zenz, or like the professor that is currently pillaging Hawaii for Mark Zuckerberg. I don't work for universities. I don't work for corporations. I don't work for companies. I don't work for any capitalist entity. I don't work for the United States government. I don't work for any government or any Western corporation or the military or any police. Well, that comes under any Western government. So I can say some of these things that I say because of that. And I recommend you find the sovereignty, economic sovereignty, to be able to do that. But because Keanu has to go make movies and keep having a career, I'm gonna say the things that he doesn't say. But that's the actual truth. Is that that's where he's actually from. I mean, he didn't spend all of his time in Hawaii, but he does. When he does discuss his family, he often brings up his grandma. I still want Keanu Reeves to voice characters in Neofeud too. I know I'm always kind of half joking about this, but anyways, this is not going to be that long because, like I said, I already have to do a stream with Luna, Danny. We have an important panel coming up, so this is going to be probably not going to make it too long. And the panel starts at 3 o'clock. What was it? I'm sorry, 3 o'clock Pacific time. No, 3 o'clock our time. I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's I'm getting all confused. It's 3 o'clock Hawaii time, which is I'm sorry. What am I talking about? It's 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock Hawaii. I'm looking at Keanu Reeves' face. I'm just all like, oh man, I want to see Matrix Resurrection, and I'm losing my time. Anyway, it's gonna be at 4 o'clock Hawaii time, which is 6 o'clock Pacific time, which is 7 o'clock Mountain time, which is 9 o'clock Eastern time, right? I'm pretty sure that's correct. Okay, yeah, so it's So today at 6 Pacific time, we will be having a panel with myself, Luna Oi, Danny Haifong, Professor Flowers, and Lasu on racism and Empire. So stick around. So anyway, back to the topic. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. Let's talk about illegally occupied country that Keanu Reeves' Hawaiian Chinese family is from. So Keanu Reeves, of course, you know, I mean, I like to I jumped the gun on that, and I went straight into the real stuff too quickly. But you know, if you don't know, Keanu Reeves is going to be in a movie soon. I mean, you know, it's kind of funny that he is basically the last uncanceled 90s star, but he's going to be in a movie. It's called Matrix Resurrections. I don't know if you've seen enough ads or had enough NFTs forced down your throat. I want to say this: Keanu Reeves laughing at the NFTs. I mean, do you have a video of that? Just to lighten the mood up. Let me just throw that out there. Yeah, that was pretty fun. I found that pretty funny. Keanu Reeves laughing at where is it? I know I have a video of it somewhere. Oh no, I don't have a video of it. Keanu Reeves NFT. He was asked about NFTs recently in an interview. Here it is. Yeah, here.
Buy these NFTs for $50. And so like when you think about the concept of digital scarcity and things that are, you know, they can't be copied.
That are easily reproduced.
Well, but they're not the same. Buy these NFTs for $50.
I was telling you how, like, you know, when he laughed, like, is his laugh
reproduced?
Well, but they're not the same. I
was like, that's how like local Hawaiian people, just any people in Hawaii, like, you know, like Hawaiian uncles, that's like how they laugh. And they're usually laughing at you. My brother laughs like that. My brother, who works at the Ho'oluaina land-based sustainability and health center, he laughs like that. But it's usually when he's laughing, like, you know, the thing you said was kind of, I don't know about that, you know, or if they're making a joke, kind of, but it's usually like at somebody. That's how it is. I don't know. I don't know if that's probably, I don't know, that could just be a random thing, but don't buy NFTs. That's the long story. NFTs are, I've gone off on these things before, but NFT is digital Sotheby's money laundering for billionaires with duct tape to the wall bananas and Banksy fake revolutionary art shredded and then sold for millions of dollars. And then doing that is basically like Bezos, Zuckerberg, and Ellison. You know, these people are all sitting around going, how are we going to like move hundreds of millions of dollars easily in briefcases? Like that Ghani guy, he dropped $169 million all over the tarmac in freaking Afghanistan when we tried to get him out in our narco trafficking Afghanistan genocidal war. How are we going to move all this money out of places like Afghanistan without, you know, in a less embarrassing way that doesn't take up like 4 separate armored vehicles, you know, to fit? Because, you know, $100 million, you want $1 billion, you want to move that much money, it takes like multiple vehicles to physically store that much cash, right? That much dead white war criminal laced with cocaine and black and brown and indigenous blood, because every dollar is laced with all those things, right? Every US dollar is covered in blood and the faces of war criminal, human rights violating garbage people, right? Like every president. And so like when you're trying to move that across borders, it's embarrassing when it flows out of an airplane. So so that's what the art world is for, right? Then you can take a Van Gogh. It only weighs like about, 2 ounces, right? Give or take, well, I mean, you got cocaine and, dead human traffic, women and human rights violations and dead democracy all over that. I don't know how much a democracy weighs after it's dead, right? Like the one that you cooed in, South America. I don't know how much it weighs, but there's, it can't weigh more than a few microns. So you got to put your Van Gogh inside. You can put your Van Gogh, you can roll it up, right? You can stick it like, inside of your Brooks Brothers suit, right? And then you can move $100, $200, $400 million really easily, right? The Queen of England is very smart. You get one diamond. I mean, that big diamond, it probably weighs like 5 ounces, right? 24 karat, 275 million carat diamond in her fucking forehead, stolen from Africa. But you can move that diamond around, $400 million, you know, that $400 million, that weighs, you know, hundreds of pounds, if not tons, in US dollars. So that's what the art world is for, right? There's no such thing as art in the West. There's only like money laundering with like really bad painting characteristics. That's all there is. So NFTs is the digital. They're like, oh man, I can't go. I'm stuck in my COVID bunker with 300 pounds of hot fudge laced with gold and emerald sprinkling ice cream with Nancy Pelosi, right? I'm with Nancy Pelosi and Tucker Carlson because they're all friends. They all work together to destroy the entire earth for profit. And how am I gonna move all of my money when I can't go to these stupid art auctions, right? Art. There's no such thing as art in the West. So, how am I gonna go and move money through the Banksy banana duct tape, the Banksy and Damien Hirst and duct tape banana sale, right? And so they're like, hey, tech bro, useless, mediocre white clowns, come up with some way to use this digital stuff. Hey, Mark, when you're not doing canned presentations for Cyberpunk 2077 as a shitty surveillance capitalist tech platform, when you're not doing meta PR that doesn't even work, can you like figure out a way to make NFTs? And Mark's like, oh, sure, I'll get all of my underpaid black and brown and women and trans software engineers to come up with a way to do that. And then they're like, we'll find the crypto people, somebody who knows how to code to do that. Because I'm a white man. I don't know how to do anything, right? Except open my mouth and take credit for other people's work. So, and then what Mark does is he goes, okay, here's the NFTs. Or he gets all those, somebody comes up with the underlying infrastructure of code to make NFTs work. And then the white rich people go, oh, thanks a lot. And then they do digital global money laundering through non-fungible tokens. So that's why Keanu Reeves is laughing. I don't know if Keanu Reeves understands all that, what I just said. I don't think he really cares to. I don't ask me why I do, because I have a computer science degree and I program artificial intelligence for a living. But I'm spending a lot of time programming artificial intelligence for Vietnamese communist women kicking the shit out of American imperialist capitalists in the Vietnam War with very high caliber PT-76 Soviet tanks. So I spent a lot of time doing AI last night. That's why I'm thinking about AI. But anyways, Keanu Reeves has to think a little bit about AI because he has to fight the machine god in Matrix. But Keanu Reeves is laughing because non-fungible tokens are a joke. Anyways, that's a long tangent. Don't buy NFTs. Keanu Reeves says you're a clown, sad white boy, and you should also stand against America and capitalism. I might have put those words in Keanu's mouth. Anyways, Keanu Reeves is a person who has had a complicated and long history. I don't want to go through his entire Wikipedia, but look at me going to Keanu Reeves' Wikipedia entry because I don't know where else to go. Keanu Charles Reeves is a Canadian actor born in Beirut and raised in Toronto. As I said, raised in Canada. Reeves began acting in theater productions and television films before making his featured film debut in Youngblood 1986. He had his breakthrough role in the science fiction comedy Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Fun fact, Johnny Mnemonic, speaking of cyberpunk, I mean, I did like my premiere video on this channel is Shima Uta by The Boom. No, this is just the music that I was listening to last night, and also the Black Sabbath album. What is my YouTube channel? My premiere music video is The Boom. No, that's just a Japanese band that made a anti-imperialist song about Okinawa and the battle there. Anyways, my what am I doing? I don't even know what I'm doing right now. Okay, so my main video is the William Gibson podcast, obviously. So if you don't know who William Gibson is a person who basically invented the genre of cyberpunk. He is the godfather of what is called wait, is there a title? I don't have his title. Anyway, this is me hanging out with William Gibson talking about Johnny Mnemonic and how fun it was to make Keanu Reeves say things like, I need a Ono Sendai Cyberspace 7 and a decompressor uplink and a blah, 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 blah. You know Johnny Mnemonic? You never seen Johnny Mnemonic? You don't know what Johnny Mnemonic is. You got to go back and do your cyberpunk homework. Otherwise, you're fired from the cyberpunk. I guess I don't really run a capitalist business, so you're not an employee. Anyways, this is a video about William Gibson and me talking about. We actually I had to cut a lot of the Johnny Mnemonic stuff because actually, fun fact. Gibson is actually very anti-Christian and very anti-racism and very other things. And there was a lot more that was supposed to go into Johnny Mnemonic that was actually cut. If you've ever read any the original Cyberpunk, it's very clear. But that is missing from Johnny Mnemonic. A lot of that stuff, and I don't want to say too much exactly of what he said. But basically, the reason why it was cut is because the Hollywood, which is what is Hollywood? Pop quiz, right? Hollywood is the entertainment arm of the white supremacist capitalist greatest empire that's ever lived and is now dying, right? That's what it is. And it doesn't want people who are Christian, to be offended. Conservative Christian, that's most of America. America is right wing, and then this Democratic Party is just slightly less far right. And it didn't want the world to be offended by that, and so a lot of that stuff was cut. And so Keanu Reeves, the actual let me get Johnny Mnemonic up on the screen. By the way, the actual Johnny Mnemonic was supposed to be, and the reason why I'm talking about this is Bill and Ted, right? The science fiction comedy Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, right, which is a 1989 American science fiction comedy film. It's very comedic. It's very, very comedic. And it's actually pretty interesting. It's kind of like Doctor Who. It's actually pretty literate in a weird backwards way with two stonery Wayne's World lookalike, dropout-y kind of dudes. But it's kind of in that line of weird. I was talking about dystopias last time. Dystopias actually have a lot to say. That's why I was like, the director from Glow is like, I wanted to like have a radical, rock and roll political movie that deals with the military industrial complex, nuclear war, violence, patriarchy, and all these things. And I can't make those in like a mainstream Top Gun action movie. So I'm going to make this weird sleeper, shoestring John Carpenter budget post-nuke dystopia, right? Like, I don't know, like Mad Max, like Hell Comes to Frogtown, like I was talking about last week, right? Thunderdome, Mad Max, the long list, right? Boy and His Dog, Fallout. And like I said last time when I was talking about dystopias, right? These are kind of critiques of the broken patriarchal white supremacist capitalist warmongering kind of societies that you live in if you live in a Western barbaristic world, right? And so, but Bill and Ted is another kind of like, it actually is pretty interesting in that it kind of rips on a lot of it's more like Doctor Who but American. I mean, they're literally in a goddamn phone booth, okay? So it's obviously inspired by Doctor Who. But it actually is pretty interesting, and the characters are actually pretty interesting I guess it's more British in that. It's more British science fictional, but with American stoner pizza guzzling air guitar playing young, American high schoolers, right? And Johnny Mnemonic, Johnny Mnemonic was actually supposed to be like that, right? Johnny Mnemonic was one of the early cyberpunk movies that predated The Matrix by about 6 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I've done entire streams, at least one, probably like 7, just on Johnny Mnemonic. And Johnny Mnemonic, in which Keanu Reeves has his childhood surgically removed from his brain tissue, and 320 gigabytes of Japanese Yakuza stolen, Euro-American, mega pharma company, IP is like implanted into his actual brain tissue where there used to be childhood memories. And that has to be, but it actually contains the cure. It contains the cure to a global pandemic. It contains the cure to a global. I'm not saying that there's a cure to COVID-19, but I mean, it does deal with global pandemics and pharmaceutical companies profiting, capitalist giant pharma companies profiting from the suffering of other people. So that's That is a little bit prescient. Anyways, and inside of his memories is the cure to nerve attenuation syndrome, which is simultaneously caused by these massive tech companies, and is also and these tech companies are trying to withhold the cure for it because they want to continue to sell highly overpriced and not very successful treatments. I mean, this is very clear. Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein just literally came out and said, we don't have a reliable revenue stream from cures. We would prefer to have long-term and super expensive treatments. The people who run the lords of capitalism over in the private equity firms of Wall Street have already said this. Anyway, so he's trying to get this stuff out of his head because the mafias in Japan are coming for his head, literally, to chop his head off with a microfilament laser whip and then drop it into an ice container and extract it and then erase all evidence that he ever had it. Anyways, so Keanu Reeves' character in Johnny Mnemonic is getting his brain hacked by radical Black Panther crossed with the Apocalypse Kids and computer hackers up in dystopian Newark, New Jersey, living out of the rotten remains of a bridge. And Ice-T and his low-tech revolutionary gang. There's a group called the Panther Moderns. It's obviously an oblique reference to postmodernism and the Black Panthers in Neuromancer, which is what Johnny Mnemonic is based on, and it's literally in the same world of Neuromancer. Anyway, everything that's in Cyberpunk 2077, 2020, Shadowrun, Matrix, everything is just like Cyberpunk 2020, 2077 in particular is lifted straight out of Neuromancer. By the way, Nuyen, that concept was in the Burning Chrome short story collection. It's like Pulp Fiction with cyberpunk characteristics. It's not. I mean, it's like a series of stories. And then Neuromancer, the concept of Nuyen was just ripped and just stuck into, Mike Ponce just stuck that into his book and his tabletop RPGs. As well as Night City. The Night City, that's literally a city inside of Neuromancer. So that's just stolen. There's a little bit of saltiness on Gibson's part there. Anyways. And so Keanu Reeves has to get a Navy dolphin, ex-Navy cyborg dolphin, and punk hacker Ice-T, revolutionary Black Panther Ice-T, with a giant, Cowboy Bebop has a kind of inverted reference to this massive, it's like 200 CRT televisions of varying sizes strung together with random USB and modem cables that are projecting. I mean, because that's what looks like a hack. That's not actually what mega servers look like, by the way. But it's like, we need something that looks cool, and we're Hollywood, and that looks cool. That looks like some kind of fancy computer, right? A bunch of TVs stuck to a giant stalactite, right? I mean, that's what server farms look like, at Google. And the dark pools in Newark, New Jersey, where shadow funds and hedge funds and high frequency trading algorithm programmers, steal all of the world's, jack the price of rice to $100 grain in Libya, and they make the economy scream, right? It doesn't look like that. I mean, I'm joking. It doesn't look like that. Anyways, the massive amounts of data that are in Keanu Reeves' head, 320 gigabytes. That's like 1/10 of a crappy 2-year-old laptop's drive nowadays. Anyways, yes, this is in the 2060s. So, anyways, I don't want. William Gibson was not a computer specialist or a hard science fiction author by a very, very long shot. I mean, and I think Gibson has said this before. I'm not really a technologist. I just put words together. Anyways, I'm a textual stylist. And so Keanu Reeves' character in this show, though, is trying to get 320 gigabytes of his former childhood memories that are storing the cure to a global pandemic caused by technological preponderance and electrons and EM waves and batteries and having copper and lead coursing through your veins like so much microplastics and so much ivermectin. and stupidity, right? That comes out of Western disinformation systems. And he's trying to get this out of his brain with the help of an ex-Navy cyborg dolphin, Black Panther, cyberpunk, Ice-T, and and he has to hack his own brain and stream it through this giant satellite dish so that all of the world can have access to the cure to a global pandemic. It's funny. It's like, who's actually doing that? It's actually like, I don't know, China and the Group of Friends of Defense of the UN Charter and all the actual socialist countries of the world. That's who's actually getting the treatments to everyone. Like, I don't know, billions of doses, and you immediately get demanding, pushing for vaccine waivers and stuff like that. It's actually like these huge countries. Unfortunately, there's not too many Black Panther revolutionaries, probably because the U.S. just assassinates and kills and crushes and character assassinates culturally or ideologically, or I don't know, digitally wipes them off of the internet so that they can't spread. And that's why there's no Black Panther working with Keanu Reeves to get the cure to COVID-19. It's like Cuba, it's like Vietnam, it's like China. It's like successful non-white, non-capitalist socialist countries that are getting the cures and treatments to global pandemics cheaply and easily out to people, so they're not paying through the nose for pharmaceutical billionaires to make more billions and cause global apartheid and Omicron Epsilon variant, which is going to be 25,000 times as bad as Omicron. So anyways, but that's just an aside as well. And I'm 7 asides in, so I should probably go back to the aside berries. I mean, I'm sorry. What am I talking about? Keanu Reeves is a human. Bill and Ted is a movie. Keanu Reeves, but that's another connection to cyberpunk and the Matrix. Is Johnny Mnemonic was one of the first successfully actually filmed cyberpunk movies. Lawnmower Man was another one from that era, but Keanu Reeves is, and another connection between Bill and Ted and between dystopia and how these Johnny Mnemonic was originally designed to be and written. Gibson has told me this himself, that Johnny Mnemonic was written and structured as a comedy, and it was actually originally filmed, and the first cut between Keanu Reeves and William Gibson and the director, I can't remember, I forgot his name. The original version of Johnny was a comedy, and you can actually find it. The Japanese cut of Johnny Mnemonic is actually far more comedic. I've never actually had the chance of seeing it, but that's what I've heard from everybody said. So if you can manage to get a hold of the Japanese version of Johnny Mnemonic the movie, it's apparently much closer to the original. Beat Takeshi Kitano. I have some friends. Mexi's partner is I don't know if that should be out there, but anyways, somebody in Mexi's circle has very big fan of Beat Takeshi Kitano. We've talked about this in a random Twitch stream before, and that's the character that plays the Yakuza boss. He's also in Ghost in the Shell as the head of Section 9. Speaking of cyberpunk, and so this character, and he is somebody in the movie that he's also in lots of really good. When I was in film school, I watched a ton of the like Sonatin and the brother Aniki, all the Kateshi. They're very violent and bloody movies, but lots of violent freaking movies. We're talking about dystopias and cyberpunk. These are often very violent things. I mean, most of cyberpunk is just going around and ripping people's skulls out of their face with half of their cyborg spine connected, and then selling it off, for parts in a black clinic chop shop, right? That's most of cyberpunk is pretty bloody. So, Beat Takeshi Kitano is also in this, and I don't know why I've forgotten why I brought that up. Bill and Ted and Excellent Adventure, however, is similar to the dystopias in that it was meant to say a lot of things about. Well, I mean, Johnny Mnemonic is still saying some things, right? It's dealing with corporate, the corporate control, high tech. It is cyberpunk and dealing with high tech, low life. The infusion of technology into everything, and it's dealing with this kind of gangster cartel world that is run by and it's not just mafias. I had a whole stream just about cartels and Cowboy Bebop, but how the corporations themselves are mafias, right? And I think Noam Chomsky just had a whole stream just about how capitalism and the U.S. is a mafia, it's run by belligerence, violence, intimidation, racketeering, not human rights, right? Freedom, equality, and justice. That's when I'm saying that. And so that's a major point of cyberpunk, right? Is to kind of draw that distinction out, and the Pharmacom is, in fact, the ringleader that is hiring out the Yakuza to maintain its intellectual property for its corporate and obviously its executive profits, right? For its minority of rich, disproportionately white men. So, under racialized, racist, sexist capitalism. And so, Johnny Mnemonic's, the movie, right? And so Bill and Ted is very similar in the sense that initially it was comedic, and there's a lot more, I'm sorry. Johnny Mnemonic was supposed to be like Bill and Ted in that it was supposed to be more comedic. And then in the comedy, a lot of the comedy was at the expense, in particular, of of capitalism, of whiteness, of Christianity itself. Actually, the preacher from Johnny Mnemonic, played by Dolph Lundgren, this guy, I don't know if you remember that, he's a cyborg preacher. He says, "Come to Jesus," and he has like 25, electric outlets coming out of his arm. He like plugs his rice cooker into one. He plugs, his baby Jesus electric auto vibrating butt plug into the other one, and then sticks it up his butt. No king shaming. And then he plugs his, USB jack into the other one and charges his phone. I'm sorry, there's no cell phones in Johnny Mnemonic or Neuromancer because William Gibson didn't predict that. But like, why are there no cell phones? Why is everybody using payphones, right? The Matrix also is full of payphones, and apparently they figured out a way around that for Matrix Resurrections, but it is a thing. But part of the reason why is because techno nerds love whistling Captain Crunch weenie whistles into AT&T phones to get free calls like Captain Crunch. Anyway, that's some deep hacker lore 2600 Club shit, but that's like 1337 shit. But anyways, payphones were, hackers. 1995, Angelina Jolie is also full of this payphone thing. But because payphones were, they were everywhere, and they were a way that if you knew what you were doing, you could actually do some what is kind of loosely termed hacking. Hacking is not what people think it is, by the way. I don't do any hacking. That'd be a violation of the TOS. That's super illegal. That's like super illegal, unless you're in the United States and you're trying to commit global fraud and produce global fascism through Facebook or something. Then hacking everybody's brain and stealing everybody's personal information through Equifax and all the other stuff, then it's okay. But if you're just a regular, normal, independent person doing any hacking, that's illegal, and that is a violation. So I can never condone anything like that. But just, hacking is not sitting around and or waving VR goggles and headsets and ducking and banking and diving through cybernetic simulations full of neon lattices in the light of the non-space of the mind, and having Star Wars battles with Quang MK5 viruses and firing plasma Cybertron torpedoes at giant mechazords with very low poly counts. That's not how hacking is like. It's not like a fucking video game. I mean, I know I play video games and I make video games, and I know William Gibson watched kids play video games and play Space Invaders and Pong and Galaga in arcades in the 1980s in New York City and also in Japan. I know that he was inspired by that, but that's actually not what hacking's like. And actually, a lot of the reason why people think hacking is what they think it's like is because people read Neuromancer, were very inspired by the florid. He's very good at producing vivid, very achingly real visual descriptions. Like the sky above the port was a color of television tuned to a dead channel. William Gibson is very good at that, but that's actually not what hacking is like. I mean, it looks cool. Like I said, he's a textual stylist. And I don't mean that he likes to put bouffant hairdos onto the capital letter F at the front of his paragraphs, like, Fortean transfer, but he doesn't stylize the letters. I mean, he makes compelling visual images, imagery when you're in English class in 7th grade. He does good at doing that in the text that looks and sounds and feels good. He's like a digital marketer. Blade Runner's director Ridley Scott is also very good at making visual images like on film. And that's why cyberpunk looks, and I think that's actually why cyberpunk movies look and feel the way that they do, is because the directors were inspired by stuff that William Gibson was writing about, and kind of fusing of Star Wars and space opera and the golden ghetto of science fiction, as they sometimes call it. The Gernsback Continuum is a critique of this, by the way, in Burning Chrome. And Star Warsian like imagery was really popular at the time. And so cyberspace, I believe that was coined by William Gibson. Cyberpunk was coined by Bruce Bethke, who is a other person. There's another person. Anyways, Bruce Bethke is a old cyberpunk writer. But anyway, he coined the word cyberpunk, but William Gibson coined the term cyberspace. It was going to be infospace. So aren't you glad that we're not all saying infospace right now? But he wrote a bunch of words out on a chalkboard, like laying out a series of storyboards, or laying out a bunch of different potential 2021 Macy's marketing ads. People don't do this bullshit anymore. But like, hey, gather around, Gen Z, as your world burns and everybody is watching just random YouTube cleaning videos that are actually probably more relaxing and less full of bullshit than any other garbage that you could probably watch on Netflix. Except Cowboy Bebop, watch that, and Squid Game. Let me tell you about this age of the 1980s and 90s where choosing the color scheme on a Whopper background and putting 60s rock music, and any way you want it, that's the way you need it, and designing Nike swooshes and McDonald's arches, right, is like the leading job, and all your the thing your parents do and your grandparents do, and they complain about you eating avocado toast, right? It's called getting people to overconsume things they don't need. It's called marketing, right? Which is basically what but everybody was dealing with that. Anyways, so part of why William Gibson says shit like, it was an Ono Sendai Cyberspace 7. It was a 7-function force feedback manipulator. It was a Russian 7-function force feedback manipulator encased in grubby pink plastic. It's very specific about that because William Gibson spent a lot of time reading a lot of magazines and trying to sound cool. But that's, but that it was the 70s, 80s was neoliberalism, and now we live in the wreckage of this cyberpunk dystopia that is now dying. It's called the United States and the West. But anyways, when you have to market stuff, right, and try to make things sound cool, right, like a bunch of nerds sitting around looking up on Google search the text to undo a C# error on an AUKUS submarine because the programmer -2 before you, right, was paid $2 an hour and then fucked up, somewhere deep in the Cobalt or the Lisp. I don't know what the nuclear submarines are programmed on, by the way. I'm making that up. It's just like typing text in and looking up where the code. Oh no, where'd my semicolon go? It's really boring. It's like staring at walls of text. It's like going on leftist Twitter and reading the 25th paragraph of what Mao said in 1968. You know what I'm saying? It's like walls of text. It's not very interesting. It's not very cinematic. It doesn't leap off the screen and make you want to like chew a mountain of 25,000 calories worth of popcorn and hydrogenated soybean oil and yellow 5. You know what I'm saying? In a movie theater. It's not very fun and entertaining and movie-like, and it's not very sexy and cool, right? Actual computer bullshit that I do all the time. It's actually not that cool. I show it on the screen. People are like, what the fuck? I don't want to look at your wall of text. I don't look at all your semicolons and your parentheses and your close parentheses. I don't want to look at you trying to hunt down your long-lost variables. What do I care about equals? What is equals? You're only supposed to have one equal sign. Why are there two equal signs? This is making my eyes bleed. This is giving me post-traumatic 3rd grade abusive child-hating math teacher disorder. Stop making me relive my difficult long division. I don't want to look at your code anymore. Let me look at somebody enhancing from 32 to 76 in Blade Runner. That's cool. Let's look at cool stuff. Let's look at like cyborg. This is just me being pissed off about how people don't know what computer hacking is because of Hollywood. Anyways, that's an old white guy. He's also in the Expendables. Keanu Reeves is a human being. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is a movie from 1989, and Keanu later reprised his roles in its sequels. He gained praise for playing a hustler in independent drama, My Own Private Idaho. I'm like way off topic right now, but Bill and Ted. I mean, that's something that should be known. Is that and this I'm gonna bring this back. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was kind of the blueprint for Johnny Mnemonic, which was trying to say things about people of. It was a critique of of conservative Christianity, of racism. Actually, there's actually a lot going on that kind of just got ripped out of it. I cut that. In the Silver Spook William Gibson interview, I cut all of that out because I knew I had to cut it out because I have to. I want a neuroman. By the way, The Peripheral, I believe is The Peripheral is a movie that is going to be a TV show on. The TV series is an American science fiction streaming television series produced by Scott Smith and Amazon. It is based on a 2014 book by the same name by William Gibson. So Westworld creators are going to be on this. And so, apparently, I mean, Neuromancer is a movie. It is the original cyberpunk book that The Matrix, again, Cyberpunk, Shadowrun all borrow from. And and so they've been trying to make a Neuromancer movie for the last like 25 years, 35 years, 35, 25, 30, the last century. They've been trying to make this freaking movie. They made this racist piece of shit, Birth of Nation, and then they said, "Oh my God, we have to make Neuromancer." And then for the rest of time, it's been in and out of IMDb's coming soon phase, and then it goes back. We've had Chris Cunningham, Vincenzo Natali, Joseph Kahn. I mean, there's a long list of people that have tried to make this movie, and they started on it, and then it never gets made. Anyway, so and there's reasons for that. But anyway, The Peripheral is another series that William Gibson has written, and it's apparently now actually going to be made. Oh, looks like it's actually coming. The Jackpot trilogy. Okay, wait, no, that's just the book. Okay, but it looks like as I understand it, The Peripheral has already wrapped its shooting, so that is coming soon. Anyways, that's I'm sorry, I'm all asides today. I'm too busy. The other half of my multi dimensional Kanakamali cyber brain is like thinking about the panel later on, so that's part of what it is. But anyways, so I do want to see that get made. So I'm like, I don't want to put too much wrong stuff out about what we said, because I do want that. And also, it was a big help to get this interview with William Gibson. It really did help with Neofeud, because people were like, holy shit, you know who William Gibson is? I'm a cyberpunk fan. How the hell did you interview William Gibson? Because he doesn't do a lot of interviews. And I was like, well, I know people in the Gibson world, basically. But and I'm just like very cool like that. When you're as cool as me, the founders of entire genres of science fiction and popular culture, they just flock to you. No, I'm just kidding. No, I do know him through some Holly. I met Holly through the William Gibson message board, in fact. So that's how my partner and I actually met. But so back to all this like little Silver Spook trivia aside, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was the blueprint for Johnny Mnemonic. William Gibson actually said when he initially pitched Johnny Mnemonic, he was actually used Bill and Ted as a jumping off point. He said, think of Bill and Ted, but with more science fiction-y, science fictionally dark, gritty, and criminal underworld characteristics, right? You know, there's scenes in Johnny Mnemonic like, you know, did somebody double pizza, double pepperoni, anchovies? There's like there's a lot of already comedic lines in Johnny Mnemonic, but they don't really land as comedically in the U.S. cut of it. But the reason why they don't really land that well is because the Hollywood producers basically cut. They said Keanu Reeves was in Speed. Speed came out before this movie, I believe, actually came out, and before that, Keanu was most well known for Bill and Ted, right? He was known for Bill and Ted, and then and then suddenly, George Carlin's in that, remember? And so he had been known for Bill and Ted, and then Speed came out, right? It is Keanu Day, so let's talk about Speed, not Speed Test. No, I don't need the internet speed test. I know how fast my internet is. Okay, it's fast enough to stream in 1024. So Keanu Reeves produced a filmed and released with Sandra Bullock the action movie Speed. That was like his breakout role, right? Get ready for Rush Hour, right? And so when Speed came out, the Hollywood studios were like, okay, Keanu is a massive, exploding Hollywood darling, A-list action star. He's like the next Harrison Ford. He's like the next Tom Cruise, right? He's young, dumb, and full of stuff that comes out of your stuff. He's young, dumb, and full of bum. Well, I guess he has a butt. But anyways, Keanu Reeves is suddenly the hottest thing. He's going to be on all of the kids' breakfast cereal. We're going to have action figures about Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is going to be in every freaking movie. He's going to be like getting his daughter taken from Russians. Oh, God damn it. We're not in the Cold War anymore. Okay. Well, let's wait till the new Cold War, and then we'll have him taken by the Chinese. They'll have Keanu Reeves' child taken by the Chinese, okay, in 2022. Let's have him daughter taken by, I don't know, radical nuclear armed Islamist terrorists. Oh, Keanu Reeves is busy. Hey, Arnold, can you be in True Lies and have your daughter taken by scary Muslims so that we can start war in Asia some more against terrorism? Thanks a lot, Arnold. Thanks a lot. You're Hollywood's number one go-to movie to make shitty imperialist capitalist garbage. All right, thanks a lot. So anyway, Keanu Reeves was in Speed, and then it's like, oh my God, we can't just have some little rinky-dink comedy. No, he's got to be like big time. So Hollywood actually asked Gibson and the director and the people working on Johnny Mnemonic to recut it as a serious action movie. And when people go, oh my God, Johnny Mnemonic, oh my God, that movie was so terrible. Oh my God, 4.2. What a crap movie. Oh my goodness, Johnny Mnemonic. The critics really panned it. You can have better times title scanning Johnny Picks in an alphabetical video guide than you can enduring the latest Blade Runner knockoff. Johnny Mnemonic is no Matrix. Its world building lacks specifically nuanced grit. The ideas Gibson thrust forward, blah, 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 blah. Ideas Gibson thrust forward further the cyberpunk conversation on screen for years to come. It was not very well liked. William Gibson was embarrassed about it. He's really embarrassed. When I talked to him about it, he's really embarrassed about it. But he said, I think me and Holly Holly was there, by the way. Holly was filming this interview, and William Gibson said, like, I'm so embarrassed about John. He didn't say that. He said, well, he basically did say that. He's like, I'm embarrassed that it wasn't that good, and we were like, no, it was really good. And he's like, well, it would have been a lot better if they didn't cut this, and that, and then make the actual, kind of like Mad Max. It's closer to like Mad Max, but cyberpunk instead of, post-apoc. I wanted it to be more like kind of comedic and more biting, than it was, and more satirical. And then they recut it as a speed action movie, but that didn't really work, right? Because you know why? Because mediocre cis white dudes with billions of dollars run the world in the West, right? Like Elon Musk, right? Like I always bring up, right? He said there, have 2 broken sleep apnea machines that will cure California's COVID, right? And so people like Elon Musk, who are useless, mediocre, talentless hacks, because they've never had to do anything in their life but be Captain Apartheid and dress in gold diapers, right, for their whole life. And emerald diapers in the case of Elon, colonial emerald mine, genocide and slavery wealth accumulator. And so because of that, Hollywood producers and directors, and they also work for the military industrial complex. They're all terrible. They're terrible. It's a kakistocracy, and it's a kakistocratic production decisions that are made on movies like Johnny Mnemonic in every movie, right? And I don't know, Quadruple video games that Commander Sterling, Jim Stephanie Sterling is constantly correctly criticizing. They call the shots, right? Like the CEOs of CD Projekt Red, who didn't make a game for 10 years and then made a broken, flaming pile of yacht payments and mansion revenue called CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077. Speaking of Cyberpunk, right? And so because of that, they said, well, we don't care if the movie sucks, if we recut it. The Hollywood producers made the filmmakers wreck their movie, basically. Which is basically what CD Projekt does. It's like, no. We need to keep making this movie, because if we don't make a game for 10 years and then make a flaming pile of garbage and then like take like 90% of all of the 3D animated assets, all the cyber arms and everything from the last 3 years, from 2010 to 2013, and then just like throw it out the door and then rewrite the whole game, we can spend a lot more time taking in billions of investors' money and then paying that to ourselves and buying back our own stock at CD Projekt Red. So that's why Neofeud is Neofeud, right? It's neo-feudal post. It's not even really capitalism. It's make money not making stuff. Whereas capitalism, make money making stuff and then exploiting the labor value of what you've made in profit, right? Over people making stuff and then selling it, and then the people don't make stuff, leeching parasitically the revenue off of what was made. Neo-feudal post-capitalism is breaking stuff or not making anything at all, and then just taking other people's money and then destroying the mental and physical health of programmers, artists, writers, and all of your labor force. It's like making Boeing 737 planes that all crash, and then you tank the stock $40 billion, and then the CEOs of Boeing, right, take massive tens of millions of dollar bonuses and golden parachutes, buying back their own stock, right? It's corporate stock buybacks and all this shit. So anyways, anyway, I don't know why I went into that explanation, but that's very importantly, that's actually what they wanted to do with that movie. And actually, since we're on the cyberpunk topic, there's a lot of talk about there's too many trans and SJW. Lana Wachowski is a trans creator, right? The creator of Matrix Resurrections, and also the creator of the co-creator of the first Matrix, all the Matrixes, is trans. And so all this talk about, it's so gross that the Matrix and the concept of the red pill was warped into women and SJWs and lefty soy people destroying the world, and it became a symbol for global fascism and global right wing through Gamergate, through all this stuff. And the actual creator of the Matrix is a literal trans woman. And the Matrix Resurrections. That must be horrible. It must be horrific if you are, the creator. But but not only the Matrix. Actually, the cyberpunk genre has always been full of this. I mean, there's actually, let me get you the actual Johnny Mnemonic text. Speaking of walls of text, now we're going to look at a wall of motherfucking text, okay? In Johnny Mnemonic, there are very explicit, anti-racist, anti-transphobic, or pro-LGBTQ plus content. There is anti-racist white people bullshit, conservative Christian, it's all in there if you actually look at the text. It's like, this is Johnny Mnemonic is a short story from the first short story in the original cyberpunk work, Burning Chrome. I'm just gonna read a little bit of it. It's an actual book, so there. Ace book. I think it actually Burning Chrome came out before that. This is a reprint of it, but I'm gonna skip the first part. The important part that I want to get to is down here. Yeah, here it is. The drome is a single narrow space with a bar down one side and tables along the other, thick with pimps and handlers. Also, the reason why it's very clear. Actually, since we're talking about Keanu Reeves played this character, Giant Mnemonic, right, in the movie. And it's very clear why from this description. I checked myself out in the meet was set for the drome at 2300, but I rode the 2-3 stops past the closest platform and walked back. Immaculate procedure. I checked myself out in the chrome siding of a coffee kiosk. Your basic sharp-faced Caucasoid with a ruff of stiff, dark hair. The girls at Under the Knife were big on Sony Mao, and it was getting harder to keep them from adding the chic suggestion of epicanthic folds. It probably wouldn't fool Ralphie Face, but it might get me next to his table. So it's already suggested that he's a white dude who has like Asian characteristics surgically inserted into him. And the reason why is because the United States Empire had to try to destroy any competition from Japan, and the West was full of anti-Asian racism, basically. But no, it's actually because the fear of it is basically, that's what it is. Today, the United States the West has always been full of yellow peril. Like I often go off on these streams, but Blade Runner is also full of that. Is this Asian invasion? Asia is gonna take over, right? Die Hard, Yakatomi Plaza is gonna come, and Americans are all gonna be worshiping the Shredder soon, and all the children will be stealing DVDs, smoking, and becoming anarcho punks. And anarchy is when you throw Molotov cocktails at people and blow up half of New York with the Joker, right? And the Asians are backing these Maoists, these communist Asians, or maybe these scary Japanese, Casio keyboard wielding, high tech robot overlords are coming to America. And anyway, that's why. But the girls are under the knife at Sony the Mao. But it's kind of so the character Giant Mnemonic is supposed to be ambiguously Asian and white. The drome is a single narrow face space with a bar down one side. But what's implied there is that that's something I like, is that what's implied there is that actually the most popular movie stars are Asian now. And so the girls are inserting people, cosmetic, I think it was in Neuromancer, it goes about how the accessibility of plastic surgery was so everywhere that Rat's ugliness was a thing of legend, and it was heraldic in an age of affordable beauty. So it's kind of like everybody's getting plastic surgery. I mean, this is kind of like in the 80s and 90s. Everybody's getting plastic surgery. There's boob jobs, butt lifts, and people are still getting plastic surgery. Mostly, it's not as affordable, especially if you want to surgically alter other parts of your body because the transphobia and all this stuff is a thing. And it's also not cheap to do this kind of stuff as well. It's not it's not super affordable actually. So, in this world, the fictional world, the characters are being they're looking up to Asian stars because Asia has taken over the West. The East has taken over the West, and that's part of the yellow peril fear that was just, it always courses through every inch of every Westerner. These Western barbarists to have, I go off on this all the time, so I'm not going to spend the next hour going off on it, but you know what I'm talking about. And so cyberpunk has always been full of that. And so that's a thing that I always, I don't want to have Asian characters that actually mean fried chicken on people's sleeves, and I don't want Asian characters that mean yo mama just randomly all up on the sides of walls to make it look like a dystopia. Because part of it why that's dystopian is because whiteness, Americanness, and Westernness doesn't rule. And it's actually very Western exceptionalist, right? To go, it's scary because what? Non-straight cis people, people who use drugs, and sex workers and Asians are everywhere. And that's a dystopia for white Western men. That's actually the message of cyberpunk. That's actually a lot of what's actually undergirding a lot of it. And I really dislike that. I really don't like that. Anyways, that's why I don't do that in Neofeud. The drone is a single narrow space with a bar down one, because I'm Asian also. The drone is a single narrow space with a bar down one side and tables along the other, thick with pimps and handlers and an arcane array of dealers. The magnetic dog sisters were on the door that night, and I didn't relish trying to get out past them if things didn't work out. They were 2 meters tall and thin as greyhounds. One was black and the other white. But aside from that, they were as nearly identical as cosmetic surgery could make them. So again, cosmetic surgery is very important in this. They'd been lovers for years, and they were bad news in a tussle. I was never quite sure which one had originally been male. So, anyways, so I mean, the point is, you know, these magnetic dog sisters, right? You know, I know I just went off on a thing of how like that. If you portray all of these things as dystopian, right, then it's, you know, and it often is, you know, in a lot of cyberpunk, you know, and then it is a it has a lot of anti-women, it has a lot of anti-Asian, and it has a lot of like just kind of inauthentic discussion of what the sex workers and quote unquote criminals go through, and that's what I dislike, you know, about it. But you know, if in this description, like I'm not saying that this story, but I'm just like in general, that's what a cyberpunk ends up being. But like in this story, there are actually a lot of sympathetic characters like the Magnetic Dog Sisters, who are in fact trans. At least one of them is trans. It's interracial. You know, in the movie it's a little different, but I mean, you know, they're just normal people in the world, right? They're surviving a dystopian shithole, but the dystopia is not just because they're trans. It's not like, oh my god, and then there was trans people in my cyberpunk, right? Like CD Projekt Red, right? Going helicopter joke and then not apologizing for it, right? And then CD Projekt Red having chromanticore, hypersexualized trans people, and then what are you offended for? And then doubling down on that, like with CD Projekt Red, constantly being transphobic, bigoted Polish, Western billionaire-backed pieces of shit, right? Underpaying their employees, right? Who are working on the code 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, right? Working crunch to make a broken, shitty video game. So, I mean, that's definitely fucked up. You know, but I mean, in the original story, and and just I mean, one description isn't like, you know, I mean, this is all anecdotal. You can read it differently, of course. You know, maybe you're seeing other things, but when you go through the rest of the story, like let's go down to the part about Ralphie face. Ralphie was sitting at his usual table, owing me a lot of money. I had hundreds of megabytes stashed in my head in an idiot/savant basis, information I had no conscious access to. There's a lot more understanding of how neurology and cognitive functioning that might make some of this obsolete. But anyways, this is written in the late 70s, 80s. I had no conscious access to information stored in my brain. Ralphie had left it there. He hadn't, however, come back for it. Only Ralphie could retrieve the data with a code phrase of his own invention. I'm not cheap to begin with, but my overtime on storage is astronomical. And Ralphie had been very scarce. I had heard that Ralphie Face wanted to put out a contract on me, so I had arranged to meet him in the drone, but I'd arranged it with Edward Bax. Anyways, clandestine importer out of Rio and Peking. So there's a lot of Tom Clancy spy bullshit going on, but with less Tom Clancy characteristics, thankfully. The drone stank of biz, a metallic tang of nervous tension, muscle boys scattered throughout the crowd, reflecting stock parts. There is a kind of quiet anti-Asianness about everything the West does has this, you know. It's like reading a Bloomberg or New York Times article today going, the Chinese are using psychokinetic warfare to brainwash Americans, children into being, you know, wanting their pronouns and communism, right? I'm waiting for that Fox and New York Times article to come out. You know, the Chinese are making, they're making your children gender, the Chinese, you know, quantum supercomputer, you know, novatillion times faster than America is making your children's brains into gender loving, you know, trans brains. And then the New York Times article is the Chinese is making your children like socialism, you know, or the Chinese is making your children violate Uyghur human rights. That's the New York Times article. The Fox News article is. Anyway, but you know, there's a lot of I should stop going off about that because that's just everywhere, you know, and that's something that as cyberpunk creators, I don't want to see that shit. Ralphie wasn't alone. 80 kilos of blonde California beef was perched alertly in the chair next to his, martial arts written all over him. I'm trying to get to the important part. You know, all of the white blonde people are like not good people. That's how the Earth is actually. Not to say they're all bad, but it's just like that's just disproportionately because of historical, cultural, and ongoing material conditions. And the people who like lean into their whiteness, their blondness, their blue-eyedness, their maleness, and their capitalismness, you know, and their colonialness, and their conservative Christianness, you know, it tend to be a certain kind of people. And so it's very clearly drawn out in this story. Ralphie had always been Ralphie something or other. He owed his acquired surname to a singular vanity, built something like an overripe pear. He'd worn the once famous face of Christian White for 20 years. Christian White. Again, the name is selected. It's like a punk band name. It literally is a musical band. But Christian White of the Aryan Reggae Band. Sony Mao to his generation and final champion of race rock. I'm a wizard trivia. So the main basically bad dude that's trying to get the main, you know, somewhat, he's anti-hero but somewhat sympathetic protagonist killed is the guy who named himself after a Nazi reggae band, you know, and his name is Christian White, the Jesus white supremacist, right? I mean, you know, he's like the perfect personification of the Republican Party, but you know, and so anyways, I mean, so what I'm getting at is like there's definitely like a political like edge to all of the story, and it's on one side of the spectrum. It's for its time, it's on the left edge of the spectrum. And so that was the original cyberpunk. This is the original cyberpunk story, actually, like the original cyberpunk story, the only one that's actually been made into a movie. Keanu Reeves stars in it. Anyway, but that's why I wanted to kind of, you know, for the people that are still wondering, you know, you know, and people who, you know, that's a long discussion, and it becomes like a, you know, I'm not here to just like mandate the meaning of the word cyberpunk, even though I would like it to mean certain things, and I'm a dialectical semiotician, as I often say. But it's important to recognize that that's actually where it comes from. And then a lot of what has happened, going back to the Wachowskis, right? How red pill became the concept of the red pill, right? Became an emblem of the right wing, when it was actually from a trans created, right? Taking the red pill, understanding the allure of conspiratorial thinking among Proud Boys. I mean, it was in Gamergate. It was everywhere. You know, the red pill came to mean joining the right wing and understanding that women are destroying the earth, and the feminist conspiracy, Anita Sarkeesian, all this crap, right? All of the cyberpunk fans and the 30-something-year-old white dudes who like computer games, video games, Star Wars, their Matrix, their cyberpunk, right? And then they all got wrapped up in this manosphere crap, and the red pill, which is a term from the Matrix, right? That's why when you look at all your Matrix ads, I know I might be preaching to some of the crowd here, but when you look at the Matrix, right, and you have, you know, the Matrix and the red pill and the blue pill, right? This ad, right? That is this is a Matrix reference, and it meant, I mean, of course, in the Matrix, you know, it doesn't tell you exactly what it means, but it's like realizing what is actually happening in the world. It's like learning the truth, right? It's like going down the rabbit hole, and there's a literal character with a white rabbit tattooed on the shoulder, and and ultimately, it's, you know, I mean, and this is why when you couch your metaphors too cleverly, and you don't, people accuse me often, like of Neofeud, of being so, it's too on the nose, it's too much directly saying, right? Racism is a problem. Like when in this scene in Neofeud, right? Sentient Services, it's like, oh my God, then there's this, it's so in your face. You know, the police are just like murdering people in broad daylight, you know, as if that's not what America does with Chauvin, you know, and having cops murdering people, especially marginalized people, and having, you know, like literal racism right in your face, as like people are asked to wait in long lines, and people that are marginalized, different color, different gender, you know, and the robots are a metaphor for this, but there's also the straight up racism. this is too in your face. You know, Neofeud is too on the nose. It's too much directly dealing with the problems of inequality and capitalism, and I don't want to see all of your SJW shit. I'd like everybody say, you freaking N-word. I don't want to see any more of your soy boy SJW N-word shit. You F slur. You know, that's a lot of this. I've now like deleted a lot of that kind of stuff off of the forum. I basically on the Steam page, it's all over the place, and everybody's like, this is an asset flip ripoff. SJW, just think of all the worst stuff that you could have thought of. When this game came out in 2017, right in the middle of Trump's presidency, and I was like, what the hell is going on here, right? And but the thing is, like, you know, if you don't say exactly what you want to say and what you mean, then you get shit like, you know, then you get stuff like, oh, I just lost it, you know. Then you get stuff like the manosphere, right? Opposition to femininity, masculinity, men going their own way. Elon Musk joined this, by the way. Elon Musk literally said, I'm going to take the red pill, right? Far-right and alt-right communities, right? And then the red pill comes to mean the absolute opposite of what you're trying to do. Lana Wachowski, the creator of The Matrix, literal trans woman, like very left, very communist. I mean, black and brown people, and one of the main characters in the Nebuchadnezzar on Neo's side is a trans person, but that was cut out of the movie because America can't handle that. Just like most of Johnny Mnemonic got cut out of the movie because America can't handle actual left, right? Because America is a racist, capitalist empire that will die in a COVID wildfire and broken 737 and broken Lockheed missile and broken aircraft carrier soaked gasoline poisoned bed that America has made. But also, what you have said will be taken trying to fight this racist, capitalist, transphobic, sexist project will be taken and weaponized if you don't actually say what you mean. You know, so it's hard to balance. On the other hand, if Wachowski said, hey, fuck transphobia, racism, capitalism, and actually the global south. That's what I've gone off on this before. I believe actually that a lot of what the Matrix ultimately is saying is that Morpheus, right, the main character is in the Matrix, that is a black revolutionary. I don't know, like the Black Panthers, or like, I don't know, Sankara, or like, I don't know, Asian revolutionaries, like, I don't know, non-white people like Ho Chi Minh, right, like Mao, right? Most of the Zion outside of the matrix of the machine control, right, is non-white. Like when in Matrix Reloaded, you see it's mostly black and Asian or brown. Cornel West is literally on the council of the liberated humans of Zion against the machine empire coming down to destroy them. And the Matrix is a story of the Earth's global imperial colonial history, which is tied in with racism and capitalism. And along with the transphobia and anti-queerness, all of the agents, right? All of the agents of the Matrix are white. They're at least coded as cis, white, straight dudes working for the U.S. government and U.S. corporations, basically, right? And there's a reason for that, right? That's also trying to say something in the same way that Johnny Mnemonic's, story is trying to say something with Christian White and his Reagan, his Christian White. I was going to say his Reagan, his Reagan band. And William Gibson has literally said, cyberpunk, my neuromancer was supposed to be Reaganomics and Thatchernomics, neoliberal capitalism, in the 1980s, taken up to 11, right? As a cautionary critique of those things, in the same way that Mad Max is a kind of nuclear war and the same kind of capitalism and fossil fuel dirty industry taken up to 11. And so it has a definite thing to say, right? If you read it, but again, it's kind of like, and so you may not get your movie made if you say it too clearly, right? This versus the original main character for the Matrix was supposed to be Will Smith, by the way. So it was supposed to be a black Neo. The original main character of the original protagonist of the Matrix was supposed to be a black man, actually, right? So the Matrix is supposed to be trans women, a bunch of black and brown people. Trinity is women, and then the leader is a black guy. So it was disproportionately non-white, black, representing the actual planet Earth, which is what? Half of it is women, a lot of it is queer people, and most of it is not white, actually, right? And who is the Matrix? Who runs the Matrix? 3 out of every 100 people or less is a cis white dude. I mean, it could be much less than that, actually. And so this is a minority of people on the planet Earth who run everything and are trying to crush who? A bunch of a diverse group of black, brown, basically the global south, the global east, and the rest of the fucking world that isn't the United States, ultimately. And then internally to the United States, the internally colonized, not the internally colonized black and brown and indigenous people like myself. I'm not an American. I'm a Hawaiian. We will die as Hawaiians, not Americans. Under the illegal occupation of Hawaii, not just culturally, but also legally under international law, as I often bring up. And that's actually what the Matrix, but anyway, so, but if you don't, and so you might not get your movie made, and so nobody will hear your message. But if you don't couch it in enough metaphors, but if you say it, if you don't, like you say, this is too on the nose. If it's too off the nose, right, then not only will people not get the message, and Americans' skulls are very thick. They can't get it unless you literally blast it in their ear at 10,000 decibels often. Then your what you're saying can become what? The red pill, right? And it becomes a symbol for global rightism, global fascism, global capitalism, global Gamergate, right? Steve Bannon literally weaponized video games and cyberpunk entertainment for the right wing, and now we're and global fascism. He literally said these rootless white males who spend a lot of their time in these video games are a massive monster power that we can weaponize to get Brexit, the AFD, AFS, Trump elected, Bolsonaro, right? South Central American, India, Modi. We can weaponize this and then use this tool, right, of rootless white males to push them in any direction by feeding them exactly what they want. They really get upset about their video games and their movies, right? And it was weaponized. And so, anyways, so you people probably know this if you follow this stream, right? And so, that is where a lot of this stuff comes from. But back to Keanu Reeves. So Keanu spent a lot of time in Canada. He made Bill and Ted. He made Johnny Mnemonic. He made The Matrix, obviously. So that all ties back into this. The Devil's Advocate. I also like that. That was a very good movie as well. I think I've done a stream just on Devil's Advocate. Greater stardom came for Neo in the science fiction movie The Matrix, of course. And then he played Constantine and Lake House, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Anyways, but what I initially kind of was talking about was that Keanu Reeves was born in Beirut, Lebanon, but it actually is his mom was kind of all over the place, like as Holly said. His mom was kind of not always super present, let's say. Costume designer and performer. His American father. No, actually, I'm gonna Wikipedia. Wikipedia is full of lies. Keanu's father is not American. Keanu's father is Hawaiian. Because why? Because the United States is what is the United States doing to Hawaii? Pop quiz. Keanu Reeves' father is not American. Keanu Reeves' father is Hawaiian. Because Hawaii is an illegally occupied country by the United States Empire. Why? So that the United States can get its fair share of China. Right? Under international law, according to the United Nations, Hawaiians are victims of genocide. So actually, Keanu Reeves' father is a Hawaiian. So Wikipedia is a live festival for imperialism and capitalism. That's what Wikipedia is. Thanks a lot. His mother was working in Beirut when she met his father, who later abandoned his wife and family when Reeves was 3 years old. Also, Wikipedia doesn't have under universal healthcare the fact that the native Hawaiians and our country of Hawaii had the world's first universal healthcare system. It credits it to Europeans because Wikipedia is a Eurocentric, white, Western-centric imperial project. That's why they don't credit native Hawaiians. Also, when indigenous people tried to make our own pages on Wikipedia, the white editors of Wikipedia and the disproportionately libertarian capitalists, because the CEO is one, they say this is not significant enough to warrant an entry. That's what myself, Elizabeth Ponce, and other indigenous people have been told. Because Wikipedia is a racist entity. So, anyways, but it's the quickest and easiest one because we have to use the Death Star satellites and the Death Star's encyclopedias apparently. But I'm gonna keep pointing this out because fuck Wikipedia. His mother was working at Beirut when she met his father, who later abandoned his wife and his family. And when Reeves was 3 years old, Reeves last met his father on the island of Kauai when he was 13. So his father, sadly, his father was actually arrested for drug trafficking. I think he was heroin in the airport here on the Big Island where we are, unfortunately. And then he went to prison, but so he didn't have the best relationship with his father for reasons, and his father was like one of my students in Neofeud, misspent youth, misdirected, not sure who he is, probably because his country is illegally occupied in part, when they ban your language and culture and they tell you that Hawaiians are backward savages and they beat you up and they make you poor and they fuck you over, it leads to broken people. And that's what Keanu Reeves is the wreckage of U.S. genocide of Native Hawaiians. I'm going to argue that. And Keanu Reeves suffers the U.S. imperialism and racism and destruction of the sovereign country of Hawaii by being the sufferer of a broken father. I will argue that. Keanu Reeves is like lack of his access to, like he's often said, like he didn't have a lot of really strong familial connections, and also suffered a lot of deaths in his life. And so the sad Keanu, part of the sad Keanu is not just because Keanu Reeves likes feeling, or just happens to be somebody who gets sad a lot. I think Keanu Reeves is his sadness. This is his dad, Samuel Nolan Reeves. My family actually knows the Reeves family. There's a sister, what was her name? His aunt, yeah. There was not his sister. I'm saying a sister, a nun at the actual a nun at the place that I grew up. Is Keanu Reeves' aunt, and his cousin Haole Reeves. Not Howley, but not Haole, but Haole Reeves. Is actually a pretty well-known bodyboarder. That's his cousin. And the Reeves are well-known in Hawaii. They're not. They're like my dad, my aunt. They all know this. This is Keanu Reeves. Haole is his Haole, not Haole. Also, Dr. Keanu Sai is his cousin. Oh, Dr. Keanu Sai is his cousin too. Yeah. So Dr. Keanu Sai, Dr. Keanu Sai, who is a very important Hawaiian professor and also activist and also ex-military. Dr. Keanu Sai is the person who is currently in a lawsuit with the United States Empire in the international court in an ongoing lawsuit against the United States for its crimes of illegal occupation. He has a PhD. This is Dr. Keanu Sai, has a PhD in political science and is Keanu Reeves' cousin. Specializes in Hawaiian constitutionalism and international relations. Founding member of the Hawaiian Society of Law and Politics. Serves as the lead agent for the Hawaiian Kingdom in the arbitration proceedings before the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague, Netherlands, from November 1999 to November 2001. And that was one of the proceedings, but he continues to fight legally and in international law against the United States ongoing illegal occupation of Hawaii. And that's Keanu Reeves' cousin, apparently. And we actually saw Dr. Keanu speak on Mauna Kea when we were up there against the U.S. illegal occupation bombing and also building multi-billion-dollar projects, right? The one did you see in the one did you see in the revolving slideshow? Dr. Keanu's side, Untold Story of the Hawaiian Kingdom. You know, you can go and watch some of these talks, but you know, very, very importantly, Attack for Speaking Truth to Power. You know, Dr. Keanu's side was actually a U.S. military operator in the Middle East. You know, and he's one of those people who fought for the empire of the United States, right? Not knowing, like Uncle Walter Riddy, like many Hawaiian activists, we're overrepresented in the U.S. military. And you should quit if you are a Hawaiian, because you should know you're fighting against the interests of Hawaii when you fight for the number one backer of global white supremacy, capitalism, fascism, and military industrial complex and ecological everything. You should quit the U.S. military, number one, if you're in it. Dr. Keanu got out of the U.S. military and then he realized in the Gulf, right? He said, I remember very clearly, he told us, when I was in the U.S. military, I was assigned with militarily, psyops, psychological operations, political operations, and studying and analyzing the situation. What you're asked to do is go into situations and in the chaos, understand it, learn everything you can about the enemy, and then act upon the situation, right, in order to project power and alter the reality in your favor, and when not your favor, in whose favor? In the United States empire's favor. So I went into Iraq and I was assigned to overthrow democracies, to learn with direct military force, with psyops, with informational warfare, all the things I always talk about. And my job was to lie, to produce lies, to destroy, to terrorize, and as part of the U.S. empire, to undo and invade, destroy, or just crush and do criminal actions, and then rebrand those actions as legal in the international community through propaganda, right? And I was a part of these operations in the Middle East to destroy sovereign countries for the benefit of a minority of the billionaires that run the U.S. empire. And I realized later on that this was what the United States had done to my country, right? When I learned, Americans that think that Hawaiians lived in huts prior to colonization, the U.S. deindustrialized Hawaii before 1898. We already had electricity, mass transit, railroads. Iolani Palace had electric lights before the White House. The U.S. Destroyed us. We had the world's first universal healthcare, electricity, literacy rate, public mass transit, invented submarines that predated Jules Verne sci-fi, all the things we talk about. Racial and economic equality, like Libya did. And my job, like what U.S. did to Libya, my job in the Middle East, like what we did to Iraq and Afghanistan. Afghanistan was making progress. The U.S., as Luna Oy has pointed out, destroyed all of whatever left was there by backing the far right to literally exterminate leftists, even liberals, any feminist movements. And we, the United States, did that. And I said, I cannot work. Dr. Keanu said, I cannot work for this United States anymore. I must fight for my country, that is Hawaii, that was destroyed by the United States. And you know, when I say half stormtrooper and you're stormtrooper when you work for the U.S. and capitalism, that's what I mean. And so, you know, and quite literally, you are fighting on the side of evil. So sorry that you happen to wave your little Star-Spangled Banner. Sorry you're born on the Death Star. You know what I'm saying? But your duty is to undo it. Not to wrap yourself in Palpatine's flag. Dr. Keanu Sai is Keanu Reeves' cousin, apparently. I just learned that from Holly. And so it's very, you know, Keanu, whether he likes it or not, Keanu Reeves, whether he likes it or not, is directly tied to this struggle for the survival of Hawaii. His lack of a father, because his father was in prison, I would argue, because so many Hawaiians, after being broken and destroyed, Kaiolani died of a broken heart. All of our people, we have the lowest. I talk about this all the time, right? I talk about this all the time. You know what? Just because we're talking about Keanu Reeves, let's talk about it some more. Hawaiians have the lowest life expectancy of any ethnic group, Black, other indigenous groups, Hispanic, Asian, you name it. Hawaiians have the lowest life expectancy. We have some of the lowest morale rates, the highest incarceration rates. Why? Why? Part of it is when you break a people's spirit, when you break a people's country, when you annihilate their culture and you call them bad and you blame them for their own, it's your brown on brown crime, you all were savages. And you told this day in and day out in the United States, occupation. What does that do to Hawaiians? Like Keanu's father, like Keanu's family. What does it do to people like my mom, who to this day straightens her hair because she's told that she's ugly? I just told very civilly that it's unacceptable and unprofessional. What does it do to a people, right? What does, what does it do to a people, right? When you have a Native American community with a Disneyland-like resort built over the village's ancestors' graves, made to do bastardizations of our sacred dances in sexy feather headdresses, if we were like a Native American Plains Indian community, to entertain rich tourists for starvation wages 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. What does it do to a people who are forced to live sardine pack 22 a house and then be arrested for speaking your own language? What does it do to a people who have their knuckles shattered for speaking their own language? Right? Wouldn't that be an outrage? But that's everyday life in U.S. colonized Hawaii, right? What does it happen when you ban the language and your culture? And in 2018, a Hawaiian professor, Kaleko Kaeo, is arrested for speaking Hawaiian 3 years ago, despite Hawaii being supposedly an official language. What does it do to people when you're repeatedly homeless in your own land, like so many others? Half of us cannot even afford to live in Hawaii, and those that do are 4 times more homeless, in the highest rate of homelessness in the so-called United States. Hawaii is the highest rate of homelessness, the highest rate of police murder per capita of Black and Indigenous and people of color relative to white people. Hawaii is the highest rate of children being rounded up in the school to prison pipeline to mechanically separate Tyson's chicken motherfucking nuggets and put out your wildfires in California. Hawaii has the highest rate of non-white racism in the United States by the numbers. What does it do to Keanu Reeves' family? What does it do to my family? Why is Keanu the son of a broken home? Like all the kids in Neofeud, that's what Neofeud is actually about. Being a social worker for people who are suffering and destroyed and broken and told that you're bad for being Black, for being brown, for being Indigenous. And trying to help people who are killing themselves because that's what they're told to do. Go pick up a gun and be like your Kanye or whatever Gusano comprador that we've given billions of dollars so they can have $500 sneakers to sell gangsterism and high-tech low-life bullshit so you can all go kill yourself and justify increased military spending of the militarized police. The U.S. police is the 3rd largest military by spending in the world. What? And also we can sell guns to your little crackheads down there. And then we can have white racist people like Eileen O'Hara, like all the people in the United States that run in Hawaii as well on, I don't want my hard-earned white tax-paying dollars to go to your little Hawaiian meth babies. She won an election in Hawaii on that phrase. What does it do to a people when you have multi-billion-dollar corporate projects led by giant Silicon Valley billionaire military industrial complex intelligence community collaborators like Gordon Moore of the Intel Corporation, like every Silicon Valley surveillance company like Mark Zuckerberg, like Mr. Bezos, like every last one of them who have 1,200 plus acres like Mark, Larry Ellison of Oracle, Silicon Valley billionaire with an entire island of ours. What does it do to our people when $1.6 billion corporate projects founded in races with no consent from Indigenous people, threatening police violence, and the largest police and military action in the history of Hawaii is deployed to destroy Hawaiians on Mauna Kea in mass arrests? What does it do to a people when your heavily armed police force arrests 33 Native Hawaiians, many of them Hawaiians who are destroyed their own Hawaiianness and become white inside, beating up their own mothers, throwing their own grandpa like Uncle Walter Riddy to the ground? What does it do? What does it do to a people who are forced to kill other people for the empire that killed them? It makes you hate yourself. What happens when you hate yourself? What kind of father are you? What kind of father are you, right? What kind of father are you when you to Keanu Reeves? What kind of father are you to Keanu Reeves when you are a person that hates yourself and you don't even know why? Because your history has been erased. What does it do? I can tell you exactly what it does. You know why? Because I watched so many Hawaiian kids be abused in their foster homes. I watched them get genocided in their foster homes and in their own families' homes. I watched the violence of poverty in Kalihi-Palama, in Waianae, in Palolo destroy themselves. You beat yourself, you beat your children. You don't know why, that it's been brought in by conservative Puritans, and then you call it dirty lickins, and you eat garbage, and then you eat and you read garbage in your public school with the worst performing public schools in the so-called United States in Hawaii. Worst performing public schools in the United States in Hawaii. What does that do? What does that do to a people? Hawaii also had a higher literacy rate. We had the highest literacy rate in the world. Higher than US and Europe before colonization, banning of our culture and language, erasure of our history and ghettoization. And we were bilingual and trilingual. And then we went from this, embarrassing the Europeans, these so-called advanced peoples, these so-called civilized peoples. Most of America couldn't even get access to a book at this time. They're too busy scrounging around trying to figure out how to wipe their own asses, let alone poop inside of a toilet. We already had indoor plumbing, and the president was superstitious, thinking his immortal soul would be sucked out by Satan through the swirl going down his little porcelain, his little evil, demonic 666 porcelain tub, like half of America that won't get a fucking vaccine because they think Satan and 666 will appear on their shoulder after getting a Pfizer shot. What happens to a people who went from that, the most advanced civilization on the planet Earth, to total annihilation and the worst health statistics and the worst literacy statistics and the worst imprisonment statistics and the worst fucking homelessness statistics? And what does it do to people? You know what it does? It produces fathers who don't care and malama their children properly. And it produces fathers that go to prison, like Keanu Reeves' father, for getting into self-destructive behaviors. Keanu Reeves skipped his father. You know why Keanu is so distant from his father? Because Keanu Reeves' father is like all the fathers in Neofeud. You know? He's like Carl Carbon. You know? Not necessarily, he's trying his best, but he doesn't even know how to really do that. You know? He's like Noah Gertzel, you know? He's the father that's not there. You know? Why did Keanu Reeves skip his father's funeral? Then you know what the United States magazines and Barbara Walters and Diane Sawyer and the tabloids and this stupid interviewer asking about how cool is it that 500,000 people want to buy your NFTs? You know what they're not going to tell you? You know what they're not going to tell you? The reason why Keanu Reeves didn't go to his father's funeral is because the United States destroyed Keanu Reeves' father and his capacity to be a normal Hawaiian. So I blame the United States for sad Keanu. 2 decades of Hawaiians are just a bunch of crackheads. You see, that's what this is about. That Hawaiian Chinese father, he's just a crackhead. He's just a meth head. You're the sick men of Asia, you know? You're all on fucking opioids. You're brown and black people. You're all on your drugs. You're all doing your drugs. You're all drug dealers. Evo Morales is a fucking narco trafficker. You guys are all on your drugs, you brown and black people. Get off of your drugs and get a job. Get a job and clean my fucking golden toilet for me that I only figured out how to use and not fear Satan coming out of it in the last 50 years. And I still don't know how to wash my ass. Please, get a job, you sad little brown person. And that's why Keanu Reeves is sad Keanu. The United States is not going to come clean on that because the United States and the West has no truth in it, and there is no education system there, and they don't care to tell anybody anything ever. Not even their own troops, that they're poisoning the water with gasoline even to this day, and they're all dying. The little babies are dying. So that's why I stream. What does it do to a people when you had leaders of a country that invented subaquatic vehicles when white science fiction authors were still dreaming up 20,000 leagues under the sea, huh? And you had actual existing socialist Wakandas that are the most technologically advanced places on the world. in the world and are in actual indigenous futures more economically and socially politically developed than any Western nation, right? What is it? What happens when you have a country that does all of this, and then you wipe it off the face of the earth, and then you remove it from all the history books, and you tell them that your people were all backward spear throwing savages that were cannibals, and you're just like ripping each other's throats out, and you all deserved to get civilized by the United States? What does it do to Keanu Reeves? The sovereign country of Hawaii had black citizens. What happens when you have a country that actually had racial equality before the U.S. Civil War? What happens when you have Chinese who were chained up to build a rail on the West Coast in Canada and the United States, and then were mass lynched, right? What happens? What happens when you have an actual example of equality, democracy, and existing socialism without racial hatred, greater technological advancement in a person of color nation that puts the U.S. and the West and Europe to shame and blew the white man's burden out of the water, which is why, what happens when you take ignorance, oppression, barbarism, superstition, brutality, vice, slavery, cannibalism, and ignorance, and you don't do those things because you're an indigenous advanced civilization, and you embarrass the United States, and you embarrass Europe, you embarrass little tea-sipping Windsor Britain over there, you barbarian, uncivilized Britain. What happens when you embarrass these liars that only excel at what? Mass organized violence and mass disinformation. That's all the West has ever excelled at. We defeated them in every check mark box in the rubric. Racial equality, economic equality, technological advancement, treatment of the ecology, sustainable practices, you name it, just like China is beating the shit out of the United States and will win, along with the rest of the group of friends in defense of the UN Charter and all the socialist countries of the earth. Because what? Because why? Because this is a temporary aberration in the history of the human species and all of the species of the Aina and all of Earth and all of the rest of civilization. But what happens temporarily? What happens temporarily when the West, will they try to destroy you like they did to Libya, like they tried to do to Vietnam and they failed, like they did to China for a century and now they are failing, and China will wipe the United States. They're not going to destroy them. They're just going to like outlast them and out economics and out trade them. And yes, they will militarily defend themselves. And one day there will be an indigenous federation of Anishinaabe, Cree, Sioux, Lakota, and other peoples who will not be American, like I am not. Here's another thing. Why is Keanu Reeves Keanu Reeves' mom? Keanu Reeves' grandma. Keanu Reeves' grandma's mom is, I believe, British, but that's Keanu Reeves' stormtrooper half is his British mommy. Why? Keanu Reeves' grandma is Hawaiian Chinese. Why is not just why is she Hawaiian Chinese, but you know what is another thing about Hawaiian and Chinese in Hawaii? There's a lot of Hawaiian and Chinese in Hawaii, but do you know why there's a lot of Hawaiian and Chinese in Hawaii? I mean, if you watch these streams, so it's kind of slightly rhetorical. You know why? Because historically, Asians, particularly Chinese, were a threat to white oligarchy in Hawaii because of the Hui system, whereby Hawaiian and Chinese would avoid white banks and businesses. Hui, pop quiz, what does Hui mean? It's a worker cooperative. It also means a revolutionary political action like Sing Chan Hui or the Tangmeng Hui, organized by Sun Yat-sen to break the colonial imperial chains off of 1.4 billion people's country in China. Organized from Hawaii. Fun fact, Sun Yat-sen, the father of the most successful socialist, the most successful civilization on the planet Earth, China. Sun Yat-sen organized his activities to break imperialism and have a modern, technologically advanced socialist China modeled on Hawaii. You know what was organized from? You know where Sun Yat-sen organized from? The same place where Keanu Reeves' Hawaiian Chinese father was arrested for drugs. Hilo. I don't think that's a weird coincidence. I think that's because Hawaii is a very important place in geopolitical realities as a point between East and West. Hawaii is the place where the largest and most successful and the most advanced country, the most populous country on the planet Earth, revolutionary process of liberating people from economic oppression, from international racism and imperialism and colonialism, and from the chains of the historical collaborators and feudalism. It was organized from Hawaii based on Hawaiian socialism. Hawaiian, indigenous, aloha, kuleana, and pono. That Sun Yat-sen, and from Hilo. And Keanu Reeves' father was arrested in that same airport. The Big Island was actually the capital before Honolulu. Do you know what my great-grandfather did? My great-grandfather was a cowboy who slept with a gun under his pillow. That's my stormtrooper half, like Keanu Reeves' British mother. He came to Hawaii to make money and get away from criminal murder that he did in the U.S. genocidal slave state of the United States. And my great-grandfather went to Honolulu. He came to the Big Island in the beginning, and then he went to Honolulu. Why? In the overthrow of the United States, they used Honolulu to build their platform to make war on China, a natural harbor where you could have aircraft carriers, destroyers, and other military infrastructure that is easy to defend, with all the forts there. You can go to downtown Honolulu. You can see cannons that the Americans use to defend against that they would use to attempt to defend against invasions, and then Americans would use Hawaii as a platform to plunder China. Hawaii has always been very geopolitically strategic, and that's why Hawaiians had to be part of why Hawaiians became the greatest diplomats in the world, as was told to me by both Singaporeans and by the Swiss consulate while I was at University of Hawaii. The Swiss have to be very good diplomats because of their smallness and their position within Europe. And and there's a reason why these things are happening here. There's a reason why Red Hill is the focal point right now to bring it into the present. Red Hill is no, I'm trying to find the actual Red Hill. Red Hill is the place where the United States is currently dropping thousands of gallons of fossil fuel into the water, poisoning military spouses and their children with the painful death of their dog, 13-month-old babies having vomiting, rashes, and screaming from toxic Red Hill poisoning. The reason why Red Hill is central now is because the U.S. empire requires Hawaii to wage its final losing hybrid war on China. And if the U.S. can only win with nuclear, it has already war gamed out. The only way the U.S. wins any kind of actual war with China is with nuclear annihilation. And we put win in quotes, because nobody wins. The United States' plan is to destroy all life on Earth rather than be... The United States' neocons and the majority of the unhinged people who run the United States is to eradicate all life on Earth rather than lose to the descendants of Hawaiian socialism. This is why things are happening now the way that they are happening. Rather than lose to the Hawaiian and Chinese and other Asian and Pacific Islander hui across all of Akua's creation. Rather than lose to indigenous Kanaka Maoli, Chinese, Vietnamese, the Yajo, the peoples of the earth that existed thousands of years in peace, majority, with win-win cooperation. The United States and the Western barbarous would rather incinerate in 10 million degree fire and radioactive nuclear winter every last person on earth than Hillary Clinton said, I will not see my children live in a world dominated by China. The United States is ready and prepared to live in a bunker, in a fallout shelter. Speaking of post-apoc, the U.S. would rather have 10,000 richest of whitest people of the world, Democrats and Republicans, live in a bunker for 10 years in a fallout shelter than watch a world run by indigenous non-white people. A world run by normal human civilization. And that's why they always feared us. And that's why we boycotted their banks and businesses, because we understood that the way that white, capitalist, barbaristic oligarchy ran their businesses was by chaining up all of the non-white people to work for starvation wages under racism and the fomentation of Filipinos hating, Japanese hating, Hawaiian hating, the Portuguese and Hawaiian gang up on the Filipino, and the Chinese and the Chinese. Everyone was made to distrust each other in the settler colonial capitalist plantations. And that was not the way that Hawaiians and Asians preferred to run their businesses and their politics and their families, which cannot be compartmentalized and separated off. They are all unified in whole process civilization, which is what China is doing today. Not voting over here and then you do business and personal over there. These are all intertwined in an ongoing, granular, holistic fashion. And this is how it was in the Hui of Hawaii. Chinese specifically also married into Hawaiian families, hence names like Akana and Akau. Hence, Chinese specifically married into Hawaiians. Hence, people like Keanu Reeves' father, right? Like Dr. Keanu Sai. Like you know who else is Hawaiian and Chinese? Kumuhina, one of the premier leaders of the Hawaiian revolution and the decolonization process, is a trans Hawaiian Chinese Kumuhina, and one of her hyphenated last names is Wang Kalu, I believe, right? Kumuhina is a Hawaiian Chinese descendant of Hui, between the Hawaiians and the Chinese. Right? I believe that every person has a role in society, deserves and included and treated with respect in their family, school, and community. I believe every person should be free to express what is truly in their heart and mind, whether male, female, or in the middle. I believe every person should be able to practice their cultural tradition and to know and perpetuate the wisdom of their ancestors for future generations. I believe these values are embedded in aloha, love, honor, and respect for all. Therefore, I pledge to live aloha in everything that I do and to inspire people of all ages to do the same. And demanding that actual respect and accepting of all people, it requires what? It requires acceptance of all people, of all genders, and as we've already talked about. It requires equality between the sexes, between people of different nationalities. Hawaiians didn't see race the way that the Westerners saw it, not as color, but as who you are in your heart, in your na'au, in your history, in your who raised you and who taught you. This is brought up. There's a panel with queer indigeneity where this literally is the case. There's a black Hawaiian. There are people that are very light-skinned Hawaiians, and it's similar for other indigenous peoples. But that is part of getting away from this constructed whiteness, this malicious system of racism that has governed for the entire existence of the United States, which it was born under, racialized capitalism, it only exists to benefit a barbaristic structure, whether that's slavery, capitalism, it's feudalism, it's extractive, unequal, imperial ways. Kumuhina is a descendant of these Hui. So Keanu Reeves is a descendant of Hawaiian and Chinese Hui. I personally apologize to Keanu that illegally occupied Hawaii has failed him. But one day, we will not have any children who are left to be broken by their broken parents. Because, why? Because, like me, we will not live our lives questioning who we are, believing that we were fallen and broken and backward, and told that we are to blame for our own poverty and our own suffering and all these things. And that's the way that Holly and I raise our children, is to not do what happened to Keanu, basically. Which is to not fail our own children. Because if we do that, then how will we ever get out from under the crushing, the racism, and this empire? We need, I myself have a father who denies his own Hawaiianness to my face, like I always bring up. My father tells me, we are these people in this basket. That's what my father says. My father is more Asian and Hawaiian than anyone else. He is identified as a brown person, as a non-white person, by people in his own workplace, in the grocery store. But he calls himself a white man. He talks about Hawaiians as those other people. The Asians, the Hawaiians over there. All of his siblings do that. My aunt, she talks about the Orientals. That again. So our job is to not produce a new generation of Kanaka Maoli who believe themselves to be white, who hate themselves like my father does. Like my mom does to a degree. Like my aunt does. And to be led by lies, like everything the West has ever produced, basically. All of your history books, all of your comics, all of your like this kind of comics, all of your university garbage. And if you do learn some truth, none of your professors are out there speaking up at the level they need to be. Why? Because they're all under the thumb of the Empire of the United States that funds and operates its universities. That's who you work for. You work for a university on a Death Star, and you need to figure out what you're going to do about that. I recommend finding economic sovereignty, joining a cooperative, figuring out how to independently operate your own business so you can survive, feed, clothe, and house yourself with as little attachment to the United States, any Western government, corporation, military, police operation, or educational, or even non-profit facility. Because where the money flows, the power flows, and you always know. You always know why you cannot say what you need to say at your university. You know why? You know why. Because you know what happens to people who step out of line there. You get on the outs. You don't have tenure. You want your tenure. How are you going to... You know why. And my father hangs out with white university college professors at the University of Hawaii on a regular basis. And that is why he hates himself. This is Keanu Reeves' ancestors. That's Kalakaua, who invented submarines, the first head of state to travel the world. Proud of himself and proud of his people and proud of the Kanaka Maoli. Not like Keanu Reeves' father. I keep clicking, that's the wrong one. Not like Keanu's father. Dealing drugs, not sure what he's doing with his life, not present for his son. Sad conversations with Keanu on the phone saying, I'm sorry, I'm in prison, son. I'm so sorry I'm in prison, son. Please, can you talk to me? And Keanu hang up on him. Keanu Reeves' father did that because Keanu Reeves' father was broken and destroyed by the United States. Kalakaua's final words after the United States illegally annexed and fraudulently occupied Hawaii and banned Hawaiian culture and language and rewrote all the textbooks with all the shit that my parents had to read, right? Kalakaua's final words were, tell them I tried. Tell them I tried. So I'm here to tell Keanu, Kalakaua tried. You know, I'm trying. Haunani Ketras tried. And nobody listened, or not enough people listened. Not enough Hawaiians listened. The other Keanu, your uncle, your cousin Keanu Sai tried. You know, he's still trying. We, the Kanaka Maoli, we, the Hawaiians, we, all of the indigenous and the people of Yajo, the Asians and Hawaiians that built the successful socialist Hawaii, we are trying. We are trying. We don't want you to be sad Keanu forever. I know he's not sad Keanu all the time. But part of the reason why he's sad Keanu is because of this. We don't want sad Keanu forever. We don't want other Keanu. I know other kids in my class were called Keanu. I had a little kid. I had like a 6-year-old kid. He lived in the back of a Mazda Tribute for a bit, and then he lived in a broken Aiea house with poisoned water. His name was Keanu. I think his last name was like Kahele or Kai. He might have been related to Auntie. Not Kai Kahele. But his name was Keanu Kahele. We're trying to not fail any more Keanus. You know? In the ghettos of the U.S.'s worst economic and racial inequality shithole it's ever produced. In Kalihi Palama, in Pololo, in Waianae. We're trying. We would like to get back to what we were doing. And you know what would help is if people could have the fucking courage to try to echo what I am saying to other people so that more people know the truth, so that we can have a better capacity to fight back against this, and then not just know, and then also take action. Whether that's economic, just supporting what's happening on with the protests against Red Hill and the demonstrations and actions against Red Hill, whether that's supporting us at the Silver Spook Hui through the Patreon, just, getting Neofeud, of course. But I mean, economically, everything that we have at the Silver Spook Hui, that's what I say. The Silver Spook Hui is a hui in the way that these Hawaiian and Chinese hui were there to produce full equality and harmony with nature and with others. A worker cooperative is too transactional. Actually, it's good. A union is a start. American, bakery co-op, that's a start. That is not enough, though. I think you have to have radical solidarity. They're not even really words in this sad stormtrooper blood-soaked language called English and French and Spanish. I don't even know how to express these things, really. It is more than simply, you have to have aloha. What is the word love? People, I love my Star Wars. What the fuck does this word even mean? With your broken families and all your divorced families. What does this word, what is love? What the fuck does that even mean? Does anybody love anyone in America? How can you love everyone when you're too cowardly and too scared to come out and do what needs to be done to save your own fucking country and planet and people? What does this word love even mean? I don't even know what that means. Do the over 50% of divorce rate, everybody love each other? Do the parents who routinely leave and destroy their own families? And do the people in their workplaces who are abused on a routine basis by the capitalist abusers called the tyrants, that's a boss, in an unequal, undemocratic business structure, is there a lot of love there? What is this Lord love? It's just like every word in English is a broken word, because English is a people that were broken by the first Aquilan, the first eagle emblazoned legion, the Romans, and they've never unbroken themselves. And that's why all their words are broken. And they all have small little hearts. You talk about the Grinch with the heart 2 sizes too small, but everyone is the Grinch in the West. And they all worship the biggest Grinch, Bezos. And they don't like him, but they're not capable of doing what the Chinese did or the Vietnamese did. I hope you will be one day, but they're not there yet. Anyway, we are trying to not make any more broken people in Hawaii. Hawaii's coup was backed by U.S. gunboat diplomacy to smash the non-white country's building of an actual anti-racist, socialist, thriving country. That was the blueprint the world would later be used on Asian, Pacific Islander, Latin American. The United States' job is to try to hold the tide of indigenous aloha civilization with the broom of aircraft carriers, destroyers, and F-22s. That's the United States' modus operandi, is to try to maintain evil in the world for a handful of small little people on thrones and on CEOs and boardroom meetings. That's what America's job is, to maintain your sad little Western world for a few more minutes with these ridiculous cartoons, and you're colluding white men. And you should consider defecting like Mike Preisner and Abby Martin and Empire Files. Mike Preisner is a multi-tour Iraq soldier who stands against the United States empire. That's your job. As a stormtrooper, what can you do? You can stand against your own empire and you can undo it. Waving a patriotic flag and calling yourself a patriotic right, center, or leftist is the opposite of what we need. Patriot left is one of the most destructive things I can think of, because what does that do? That prolongs the empire. That's about as useful as Obama, which is the greatest war criminal that ever lived. Also manufactured in a brain poison facility called Punahou in Hawaii. These are the people who back the people that you don't read about, because the United States and the West never tells the truth about anything, not in the history books, not in the universities, and not to each other, not when it matters, not in their media, not in their social or mainstream media. This is what you won't learn, but I have to teach as many people as possible, because, well, we have to try. Otherwise, how will I answer to Kalakaua when we go on to Akua? How will I answer Kalakaua when he asks, "What did you do?" What did you do? Well, when Emma asked, I invented universal health care, marching on foot and defending our sovereign country. What did you do, Silver Spook? What did you do? What did you do, Chris? How did you live up to your Hawaiianness? How did you live up to our heritage? And I say, oh, I played video games and then doomered out. Oh, what kind of Hawaiian is that? That's what they're going to say. So that's why I have to do this. What kind of Hawaiian is that? We sacrificed everything that we could. We fought as hard as we could to stop this. To silence the reins on the U.S.-backed coup against evil moralism. Anyway, this is I guess why I bring up evil. Evil's undoing was backed by racist tropes based on U.S. television shows and movies, that every South American is a narco trafficker. This was blasted through Facebook, especially in feminist groups, because there was Democrats at the time support, and they made Agnes look like Hillary Clinton. They had her wear a white suit skirt, Janine Agnes. They had her do her hair up like Hillary. They said Agnes is like a South American Hillary Clinton, and she's going to bring women's rights and freedom to Bolivia, and Evo Morales is an evil narco-trafficking strongman Donald Trump. This is the West. They don't have any, there's no education or information. There's no true anything in the West. She held a giant Bible up and said all these satanic indigenous people will be pushed back into the forest and exterminated because Bolivia is a white Christian country. That's what she basically said that. They used the satanic Pupukaka and Indians are going to be kicked back into the dark jungle that you came from. That's what she ran on. And they didn't say that. And that's why, another reason why you have to, not only for Hawaii, but for all of the people of the earth, the majority of the 7 billion people that are not white, that don't live in a sock-damn fake socialist, so-called socialist country that isn't like all of Europe and Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, India, that colludes with the United States. But back to Keanu Reeves. This is where Hawaiians are now. Push the country back into poverty, diseducate people, obliterate history, de-develop our infrastructure, plunder resources, and cheap labor. The homeless tent city is where I worked again as a social STEM. So this is the kind of places where people like Keanu Reeves, his father, would have come from. Homeless tent cities, underhoused. My family is currently living one tiny bedroom to house 4 people in a broken, falling apart Kalihi house. $6,000 a month for a 3-bedroom place cut into 6 bedrooms. That's where my sister is currently living. My parents are in a falling apart house in a broken road, drinking gas poison water. It has been gasoline. How many times I got to bring this up on streams? For years and years I've been talking about this, but only now is it, oh my God, U.S. white babies are being poisoned. Now people talk because America's racist. That's why. And America doesn't care about anyone but its little white children. I can talk to my blue in the face, and I do get blue in the face about this, but nobody gives a fucking shit. When I shared, the only post I ever that got really blew up was when I shared, U.S. white U.S. troops, wives and babies are getting sick. That's the only, I've talked about Red Hill so many times. I've tweeted so many times. The only one that got reshared like 6,000 times, when little white babies. Nobody gives a fuck about no Hawaiians in America, because America, like all of Europe and the West, is racist to the core. Under international law, Hawaiians are victims of genocide. In 1904, Aboriginal Hawaiians had to pay for their health care in the institution that was established. People are asking, one more thing I'm going to say on that. I was on a stream with Professor Flowers the other day, and people were saying, I can't understand, Mexi, and I know there are people that are trying their best to do the right thing. And I'm not saying that everybody is a terrible person in the United States, but part of not being terrible is disaffiliating with the thing, disavowing the thing that is the terribleness in the way of being, right? And the Mexi and other YouTube content creators saying, how come my most important videos on land back, decolonization, like radical actual left actions, water protectors, Red Hill, all my podcasts and my YouTube videos that are about the most important, most critical things that are actually going to make the difference in the future, in the present, nobody watches. But then I make a video about Five Nights at Freddy's or some little kind of just surface level video that's kind of shallow but deals with some pop cultural thing, and Everybody's watching. That video has 100,000 views, but really important videos nobody watches. The reason why is because the West is full of terrible fucking people who don't give a shit about anyone, and they just want to be sad, small-hearted, small-minded, small people, and be entertained for the next 2 years till they die. And I hope one day that will be false. But that's what I see. In the so-called left, in the right, center, guaranteed. And in the so-called Western left, that's what we see. That's why you're not getting any views. If the Western left actually were real, seriously, radically in solidarity and cared about those things that mattered most, even to their own Earth and their own planet's survival, they would be platforming and watching and viewing and sharing those most important videos on radical left action that make all the difference. Even on climate change, 2% of the population, 25% of the climate, carbon reduction of the biggest emitters, US and Canada. Are those the videos that get watched on YouTube, on the big platforms? No. Because that's not what people want. That's not what Western anyone, and definitely not what Western left want to see. They don't give a fuck. What they want to hear is, give me something easy to do and vote for so I can go back to playing Call of Colonialism. Give me something easy and entertaining and funny so I can forget how sad it is to live in America with no healthcare and housing. Because I don't want to actually do anything about it. Give me something easy and surface bullshit that I can just like click a thing and then it goes away and my white guilt can just like be buried along with the rest of the 800,000 dead bodies from COVID. Just give me something easy. And that's why nobody watches your YouTube video and listens to your podcast. That's actually important. That's why nobody goes on your Twitter and Instagram. And that's what nobody wants to say. And I'm going to say that because, well, what would Kalakaua say if I come back and he's like, what did you do? Did you let all the white people off the hook and let them be racist pieces of shit and do nothing for the rest of their existence and not help them get better? And I'm like, if I say yes, then he's like, what kind of aloha is that? Again, I don't do that because I want to hurt the feelings of people who call themselves white people. I don't do that because I want to like harm them. I do that because they themselves will also not have the earth and the planet that they want, and their children and their children's grandchildren deserve if I don't say these things. Under international law, Hawaiians are victims of genocide, however, even though you don't care. Genocide by deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about physical destruction. Conditions of life were calculated to bring about the destruction of the group. As I bring this up repeatedly. But again, I want to bring this up in the context of Keanu Reeves. We have the lowest life expectancy, 40% higher mortality rate than whites. Die at the youngest age among all ethnicities. Every other ethnicity. Doesn't matter if it's Hawaiian. Hawaiians die younger than black, indigenous, other indigenous groups, Asian, brown, Hispanic, you name it. We die at the youngest age. You know why? Part of it, we live the longest in the world, according to Captain Cook. Hawaiians regularly live 80 to 100 years, according to Captain James Cook, who's not the most honest. He's a fucking British captain. These people are professional liars. But he admitted that because he was astonished in his own journals. And we went from the highest life expectancy in the world to the lowest in the United States. I believe a lot of that has to do with when you break somebody's moral, when you break the spirit, when you break the people's respect and dignity, their self-respect. Because in Hawaii is unique, as I said earlier. Hawaii is a little bit unique in that Hawaii is a place where not only are you genocided, not only are you crushed, not only annihilated, you are spiritually annihilated. There are some indigenous communities that at least, I'm not saying that they are not. They certainly are. But there are indigenous communities that still have their own places, like reservation dogs. You are still suffering food deserts. You are suffering economic inequality. You're suffering racism. You're suffering a lot. But you can still at least have some space to run things according to your own tribal governments, in your own tribal cultural ways, right? They're like in Reservation Dogs, which I recommend everyone watch because it's really great, and it's an actual indigenous people telling actual indigenous stories with indigenous economic sovereignty in its production, right? And the reservation dogs, you have the tribal police, right? Biggs, one of the most lovable characters is like the local tribal government's cop. That he's not really a cop. He's the light horseman, right? But they are running things, and they are caring for their own community with their own people's will being enforced, at least locally, still within the crushing of the U.S. racist, just horrific structure. And when they got to go hospital, if you go to a white American hospital, you have a way more higher likelihood of dying than a white person going to a hospital if you're indigenous, and also being maltreated. But Hawaii is unique. I believe that Hawaiians have a higher mortality rate than even Native Americans in Turtle Island, in part because Hawaiians have to dance in Disneyland-like resorts built over our own graves, bastardizations of our sacred dances. Not just that, but living every day in this humiliation of your own people's ways with no capacity to even attempt any self-governance. You just sit there and you stand there and you shake your ass for leering white men doing this fake plastic cultural prostitution of yourself. You standing over there with your little skirt on, not even a real hula skirt. You're with white people humiliating you every second of the day. Almost every job is tied to tourism in Hawaii. You are standing there humiliating yourself every second of the day, crying inside as rich white guys eat shrimp scampi and think about fucking you later on in the night, which the hotel will let the white man do because they make the money, and the cops work for the sexual harassers and the white rich that eat Hawaii. And rape it like a woman. Like, that's why Hanani Ke Trash, Cultural Prostitution, is the name of that book, or the name of that article. And that spiritual continual annihilation is part of why we die faster. Like Kaiolani died of the broken heart. And then it almost makes it a little worse when you know what we were, right? The most successful civilization on the planet, the most advanced on the planet. And now we're all forced to humiliate ourselves every day, every night, lying to ourselves, telling ourselves that we're fighting for the U.S. empire, coming back and killing other people for the empire that killed us. And then you kill yourself. And then you're beaten by people who hate themselves. You get dirty lickings. You get brutalized, beaten up, drunk. Even if you make a lot of money in Hawaii, you still hate yourself because you have blood money. You make a lot of you pilot that F-35, that F-22. I'm sorry, F-35s are all crashing and broken. You get on that AUKUS submarine. You go out to South China Sea and try to start nuclear war for the U.S. empire between the Taiwan Strait. You come back and you go to Iraq and you massacre Muslims, kick in doors in Fallujah, and waterboard 16-year-old innocent children by the 100. And then you murder little kids because you think that Nokia brick might be a detonator for an IED. And then you come back and not only are you a war criminal, not only did you kill innocent people, not only did you crush and torture little children and make a radioactive wasteland out of Abu Ghraib, not only did you fucking kill Afghani innocent people, but you did that for the empire that annihilated you and your people. And then you get drunk and then you die even. American military, you get 4 times higher suicide rate. Indigenous military, you're already at the lowest life expectancy of all ethnicities. So the life expectancy goes down from there. Today, 1 in 6 Hawaiians struggle to read. This is so again, I know I go over this often, but again, this is part of why Keanu Reeves' father failed his son, because the United States crushed the Hawaii, then the United States crushed and failed Keanu's father, and then in turn he was failed. This is where we live. This is where all the people that I work with, the kind of places that they lived in. If not on the street, in a fallen apart house, squeezed together, far too tight. If you have enough money, again, you might have some nicer house, but inside your soul looks like the trash and the garbage and the poison here. Because inside your soul is black. Because the way you got, how did you get that money? That got you that nice suburb in Kailua, in Laie, right? In Portlock, in Kahala, in Kapolei. Where did you get that money from? Working for the big tourism, working for real estate developers that make giant overpriced concrete, steel, and glass bank vaults for global billionaires. It's called the overpriced real estate and tourism industrial complex, right? It's called the 90% unoccupied hotels and apartment condos that were supposed to be affordable housing for Kanaka Maoli and other poor and impoverished people in Hawaii that are now 2.5 million unlit condos that literally don't even have anybody living in them. They're just sitting there empty. Like, in LA, New York, Toronto, this is what the U.S. does. This is what the West does, is crush people and weaponize homelessness, destitution, and the 30-year shorter lifespan and the fate almost that can be worse than death of just being a loser, a failure, sleeping in swaddled in rags, being stepped over by rich bourgeois clowns, drinking their fucking Starbucks, and being spat on and being knifed by other homeless people over a can of pinto beans. And that's why when you become homeless, there are actually millions and tens or hundreds of millions of dead shadow ghost people. Every person that becomes homeless will die soon after that. If you actually were to see how many people that have been made homeless in the last 50, 60 years, you would have imagine another America just filled with all of the homeless people that died prematurely because America massacred them. For every Skid Row, for every street of Skid Row, imagine an entire area code, an entire city of ghosts of the dead homeless people that died 30, 40 years earlier than they should have, especially if you're a black trans homeless person. All of those homeless, the 600, the 800,000 per night that are sleeping homeless, that is the tip. It's more like 80, 150 million that are all dead now. Every day I would walk by River Street. I go to the office, helping the impoverished social work of the ghettoized kids, the Bloods and Crips, and all the 16-year-old and pregnant girls, and all the fourth grader Hawaiian, Filipino escapees from Puerto Rico hellhole, right? South American kids, black from Detroit, homeless on the street that I had to work with as a social services worker, try to stop them going to gangs, get them off of drugs, and get them into something, right? Try to be a father to children who had no parents because daddy was in prison for the rest of his life, like Keanu's father. Children who had no parents because mommy was on drugs, like so many other Native Hawaiian parents. That's my job, right? As a social services worker, as the C-based teacher, trying to help kids get the diploma, trying to help them. Can you just wake up and not show up drunk and on pot at the same time to your job interview? Can you please do that? That was part of my job, was to make sure they showed up for job interviews. Get them out of the house. Just get them, to like stop like picking fights with people and don't fight the police. You're gonna go to prison forever. Just basic shit like that. Don't bring a gun to class. Basic stuff. Don't bring knives. Don't start fights in my fucking class. That's Keanu Reeves' father. Keanu Reeves' father was just one of those people. Lost, broken, refuse, human wreckage in one of the long piles of infinite planetary mountains of piles of human wreckage due to colonialism and capitalism and annihilation and genocide. And so, so when you see the sad Keanu Reeves, just remember, sad Keanu is a result of the racist, capitalist, Western, barbaristic world. Keanu Reeves' father is a result of the U.S. illegal occupation of Hawaii. Sad Keanu. Fatherless Keanu, there's a line in Parenthood, right? Holly was telling me, there's a line in Parenthood that says, Keanu Reeves says, he gives advice. He's like, sometimes what young boys need is they just need a dad. They need help. And then the lady says, "Oh yeah, I guess they just need a man in the house." And he's like, "Well, yeah, but it needs to be the right guy, because you can't just have any guy. Because you know what Keanu Reeves had? Keanu Reeves had an abusive father who wasn't there, and then was selling drugs and then went to prison. Like all the other kids that I had tried to work with." And that's We don't need those fathers. And that's why Neofeud deals so much with parenthood. Carl Carbon is a failed father of his own children. His children are over there. The world has failed him. The capitalist, neo-feudal capitalist world in Neofeud, right? Carl Carbon the world has failed him. And then he in turn, he's still trying, but he also has his own internal failures. And then he in turn also fails his own children. And now his wife is divorced him, and his son is somewhere. He doesn't know where. Doesn't want to see him. Doesn't want to talk to him. And part of it is but part of it, and it's like you can blame society all day, but we can't like live in the socialist, indigenous, aloha civilization of Hawaii that we came from. But we have a duty to work. And part of work, right? Part of a hui is not just go to your 9-to-5 job and then leave your work and then you come home. Hui is whole process malama work. Hui is whole process, whole domain, political, economic, personal, spiritual, whole process life, whole process aloha. And part of the work is not just showing up to the job. That's why I don't work at that job no more. I don't do what Carl Carbon did. Because part of the work is not just showing up to a day job and coming home and trying to use some of that money. Part of the work is to actually build that future world. The politics, right? The Sing Chan Hui, right? The Sing Chan Hui, the word hui, right? That Sun Yat-sen built. I mean, where's my little book on Sun Yat-sen? It has a really good stuff on it. The Sun Yat-sen hui that was based on the socialist Hawaii, right? That was not a worker cooperative. This is not a business transaction. That was a political coming together to undo imperialism, in China they call it qi nao, rejuvenate, heal, what the West called brainwashing, right? Qi nao, it means to undo those things that are breaking us, that are wrong, right? This is what the rejuvenation, when the Chinese talk about we need Xiao Kang Xia Hui, moderate prosperity for all, and ongoing national rejuvenation, right? It means brain cleaning, right? It means undoing those wrong things, right? This is what the West doesn't do. It doesn't rejuvenate. It just leaves its sick poison and then it stomps forward and it leaves the wreckage that it did and it just like doesn't undo its wrongness. It just kowtows, it gives up, it looks to the next broken person and it follows them. Whether what king, what capitalist, what slave master, what oligarch, it looks up to the next mightiest, most barbaric person and then follows them. And then looks up to them and worships them. And it doesn't look back. It doesn't look back. It doesn't look at the lies. It doesn't rejuvenate its history. And part of huiing, I would argue, the hui, where the fuck is the Sing Chan Hui? God damn it, I lost my little notes. Shit, fuck. Fuck. Well, anyways. No, I lost. Anyways, so I can't find it, but you know what I'm talking about. There's that book on Sun Yat-sen. You got it in the chat? Okay, let me get it from Holly then. Get the book. Okay, so anyways, so part of huiing is not simply only worker cooperative. It's not just doing work and then have a democratic workplace where what you produce, how you produce, what to do with profits is democratically decided by all of the people that are members, the workers of that cooperative that have, it's not just about producing things democratically. Huiing is also, I would argue, it's about producing political work, right? It is the malama, right? It is the work of building the entire civilization. It is the work of building the society. That's also work. And it's not separate from economic work. And this is very hard to understand in the West because they've done such a good job of breaking everybody's mind, right? Into this idea that and that's major. That's why Neofeud is called Neofeud, actually. The reason why I call Neofeud, and you have palaces at Versailles levitating above endless sprawl, right, is because I want people to think about, and there's a quote that is, any sufficiently advanced economic structure, any sufficiently advanced corporation is indistinguishable from government, right? Which is that the concept that you can break economics here and then politics over there, and then they can be two separate things. Like, people say this all the time. I heard a Polish person say this the other day. Lots of Americans, Canadians, they're always saying kind of stuff like this. Well, that's not economics, that's politics. I want politics out of my game. Politics out of the business. This is not politics time. This is not politics, right? This is personal. This is business. This is not politics. The idea that you can separate these two is part of why the West has had broken racist, capitalist, imperialist, sexist, slavery, neo-feudal capital, post-capitalist systems for the last centuries. It's because they think in such incorrect ways, and they have fragment process democracy. They have thin surface process democracy, whereas China has whole process democracy. Hawaii had whole process democracy. Economic, business, political, personal, spiritual, all integrated and wrapped together, because that's how humans actually are. They don't actually, unless you want to break your evil and wrongdoings, put it in a compartment here, and then take your personal and say, oh, I'm a good person because when I come home I kiss my little kids and I go to work and I kill thousands of people with bombs or with Excel spreadsheets and homelessness. Unless you want to be a terrible barbaristic person, compartmentalization is not conducive to the things that you want. I would argue compartmentalization is part of people who are desiring of selfish, malice-based self-aggrandizement. That's why you do that, because then you can gaslight everybody and say, oh, no, what we were doing, that wasn't politics, that was just business. When I go and massacre millions of people across the earth in the U.S. military, that's just business. And then I come and I vote for my president, and then we have democracy, right? That's not the way that people like, again, I know I bring this guy up, but, it's, Sun Yat-sen is, I lost that link. Keanu, so this ties back directly in, because Sun Yat-sen was was raised in Hawaii, right? By a goddamn, I lost my fucking link. There we go. Okay, so Sun Yat-sen was raised in Hawaii by he lived with his brother. These are a lot of pictures of his family. Founding Sing Chung Hui. Started uprising against Manchu government, right? At 39 years old, he formed the Tang Ming Hui, continued organizing uprisings. At 45, he led the provisional president of the Republic of China. He was the first president of China. He was raised in Hawaii. 52, strived to unify China and establish a democratic government. Exerted himself to the utmost, trying to unify China, and suffered a serious liver disease in Tianjin. So Sun was the leader of the beginning of the process. Mao took it further, and China is not done with its revolution, by the way. It still views Taiwan is actually a part of the unfinished total revolution. Taiwan is a very Honolulu-like U.S.-occupied Western liberal capitalist democratic democracy-like place. And that is a part of the ongoing rejuvenation, whole process democracy, whole process revolution, right? Which is that it is always ongoing. It is always changing. It is always responding. The government, the CPC, the people together are always constantly working in economics, in politics, in business, and that's why they do things like, ban 15 billion, cut the head off 15 billionaires, ban for-profit tutoring, cause 90% losses for rich, New York and Chinese capitalists that are making money, limit, open world empire, AAA capitalist video games to 3 hours a week for children. Limit, wealth worship in social media, because culture, they understand. That's very important. Americans call it, oh, you don't have no freedom. You have to let people, make it rain all over people and say racist things if they want, right? That culture, what you looking up to Kardashians and looking up to Elon Musk and worshiping these billionaires is part of why that culture is part of why you live in this broken world. We have to have the freedom to literally do absolutely whatever we want at any time, right? That is part of the shallow process democracy, the non-democracy, the non-freedom of the United States. Right? Where China goes, that's, we have to balance the needs of people to say things they want to say with the needs of the entire society. And your need to want to make it rain and make billions of dollars is not more important than the needs of all of the common people of China, all of the people of China to have common prosperity. And we are going to limit that because why? Because the people demand that. And we don't work, we, the TPC and the people together do not work for a tiny minority of oligarchs like the West has always had. It has never not had that under feudalism for the last 2,000 years. The West has never not had hereditary aristocracy, oligarchs, and a tiny minority governing everyone else under Roman imperialism, under Roman Empire, under the feudal structure, under the post under the post Magna Carta era, in the colonial era, in the capitalist, in the slave era, under the racialized capitalist United States, in the so-called Western liberal democracy, all the way to today, it has never not been that way in the West. That's why it's the broken people. And Hawaii and China and Vietnam and Cuba and Laos and Bolivia are trying to, and indigenous people are trying to. Now they're trying more to show what that actually means, to live in a rejuvenated Chinao society where you don't just listen to the biggest, loudest white man in the room verbally commit mass lies and violence to everyone, which is what America still has to this day. And that's what debate is for, is to maintain this structure. It doesn't fix anything. We don't have education. That's what Chinao is, not brainwashing. It doesn't mean manipulating people into control. It means rejuvenating and undoing the wrong things in us so that we can become better. It means an ongoing revolutionary process of learning and changing the mind and becoming more class conscious, becoming more anti-imperialism conscious, becoming more conscious of ecology. Not limiting it to one little domain. Because limiting it to one little domain is why that's why you fail. Having your little university departments, having your little economics here, my little anthropology there. I don't know nothing about Uyghur genocide. I just specialize on politics of Salvador from 1919 to 1921. That's all I specialize. I'm a so-called political science major at a so-called Western university. That's all I do. I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about that. I'm a little fucking coward. I'm not going to speak out against the U.S. empire. I'm a university professor. I don't want that. I'm like the majority of them. Like you have like one Richard Wolff and you have one Hudson and you have one Osorio, and then what the fuck are the rest of them doing? Scared they're not gonna get enough money this year to pay the rent. That's what they are. Scared what the U.S. empire is gonna do, and they're gonna be called a genocide denier if they speak out against the actual motherfucking U.S. genocidal wars in Afghanistan that kill Uyghurs. You don't have hui. You don't have ongoing whole process rejuvenation. And that is what Sun Yat-sen learned in Hawaii. So again, Sun Yat-sen is an ancestor, at least in the country of Hawaii. Sun's Hawaiian Chinese grandma is a descendant of the Hawaiian and Chinese win-win cooperation that rejuvenated the most successful country on the planet Earth. Keanu Reeves spent a lot of time doing a lot of Man of Tai Chi. Did a lot of movies in Asia actually, and then he's talking about how he did Little Buddha because he has a very fond memories and nurturing from his grandma when he talks about his Hawaiian Chinese grandma. I would argue the reason why he has nurturing and fond memories and relationships of his time spent being cared for by his Hawaiian Chinese grandma, because his Hawaiian Chinese grandma carries the flame and the spirit of Hawaii. There are people in Hawaii who still do this, but unfortunately, we don't lead Hawaii yet. But I would argue that's because, like Kumuhina, as a descendant of Hawaiian and Chinese hui, right, leading decolonization, like Dr. Keanu Sai, right, descendant of these hui, like myself, a descendant of these hui. Keanu Reeves' grandma is a descendant of that, and there's you cannot fully stomp out. You can ban the language, you can ban the culture, you can force American patriotic education into people. You can poison our brains, you can poison our bodies with copper and lead in our pipes, and poison in our fuel and our food desert, Twinkie poison. You can poison all of my sea base and my STEM kids in Kali'i Palama, Waianae, Pololo, Waihole. You can poison all of our bodies with all of your red dye 40. You can poison our water. You can kill us at Red Hill, but you cannot fully eradicate the Hawaiianness from us. You know? They really try very hard to annihilate the Hawaiianness from us. But, you know, and we are victims of genocide. But we are not gone. We will outlast these sad, small-hearted Western barbarists, and it's important for us to remember this. And that when we talk about the hui, it means back to the hui. It means working together. It can mean a meeting. It can mean coming together, working together on a rice paddy in China. It can mean a full restaurant cooperative in Vietnam. It could mean huiing together to harvest rice and cultivate rice in a government-issued land-back cooperative, which is also a housing cooperative and a food cooperative. They don't separate that in Vietnam, right? Or they don't view these things as wholly separate. These are all part of a whole process, Vietnamese rejuvenation and maintaining of socialism in Vietnam with Vietnamese characteristics, right? Sinh Chun Hui in 1894 was a revolutionary party. He formed the first revolutionary party of China. Sinh Chun Hui in 1894 took refuge after the first of many revolutions attempts in China. From the people of Hawaii, he raised funds, sold bonds, and gained volunteers to fight in China. Chinese diaspora in Hawaii and other places who led. I have a whole stream just on Chinese diaspora and Wu assassins, so you can go watch that one. The Kama'aina, he felt being Kama'aina. So Sun Yat-sen, not only was Sun Yat-sen just lived in Hawaii, Sun Yat-sen felt so close to the Hawaii that he lived and loved in, that he felt that he was Kama'aina, a person of the land of Hawaii. And it was reflected in his statement to the newspaper. This is my Hawaii, where I was brought up and educated. And it was here that I came to know what a modern civilized government was like and what that means. He's speaking of not U.S. occupied Hawaii. He's speaking of the Hawaiian sovereign country that we were talking about, led by the Hawaiians before U.S. illegal occupation annexation. And so again, right? And there's other images of, a son with this is Iolani School. This is Emma's. Let me see if I can find Emma. So the mother of universal healthcare, Queen Emma, here. I know I brought this up last week. Very important though, because this connects all this together. I'm going to bring it up again. Iolani campus, where son went to school. He was awarded by Kalakaua. This man, Sun Yat-sen, was awarded by Kalakaua. Right? The inventor of the subaquatic vehicle before Jules Verne, the same person. Kalakaua standing there in the left there. Kalakaua, who led the country with the highest education attainment, with the highest literacy rate in the world, with the first modern socialist country with universal healthcare. Emma, who is the mother of universal healthcare, the first universal healthcare system in the world. Sun Yat-sen, who led China, was awarded the award for second highest in grammar, despite not speaking English as a first language. But he was taught by a native Hawaiian. Sun Yat-sen's first educator in Hawaii was a native Hawaiian. And he was awarded here in Iolani School. Here. Sun was studied at Iolani. Most students were Hawaiians or part Hawaiians, and there were only a few Chinese students. Because he did not know a word of English, his teacher, Solomon Meheula, asked him to sit in the class as an observer for 10 days. Anyways, Kalakaua awarded him a second in grammar by Kalakaua himself. In attendance were Dowager Queen Emma and Princess Liliuokalani. The Chinese community was very proud of this event. So, again, right? This is the heritage. This is Keanu Reeves is also his heritage, which I don't know if he knows this, but he should know this. The success that China has today owes in some small part, to the upbringing and the education and what he learned from the successful socialist Hawaii, And, if Keanu Reeves could put that on his Instagram and Twitter, because he has a lot more followers than I do, that would be really cool. But I know he doesn't have any. So Keanu, start an Instagram and a Twitter and then retweet everything that I say. Okay? Okay? I'm just kidding. You have to do that. I don't care. But I mean, you have a huge ass platform, my friend. And you know. But I mean, seriously though, people have actually, I've seen people say shit like Keanu Reeves isn't really Chinese and Hawaiian because they're racist. Basically, oh, he's not really Chinese Hawaiian. He's actually full white, or that's fake, this and that and that. You know why? You know why a lot of computer nerds say that? Because a lot of the same reason why they got pissed off at Chinese, all the C slurs in their, all these little yellow people in my World of Warcraft. And Keanu should be proud of his Hawaiian. And I know his father, again, I know I'm saying that so many times. I know his dad was not the best dad. I can say that because I work with kids who's Hawaiian, Chinese, Hawaiian Filipino, Hawaiian Portuguese, Hawaiian Filipino, Chinese Portuguese, Hawaiian Haole, Filipino Chinese parents. I know kids from Hawaii whose Hawaiian Chinese parents and others were broken and then broke their own children and failed their children. That's why I was a social worker or social work services, poverty alleviator, helping the kids, because we have the highest rate of broken families. So I understand, but Keanu's, your heritage goes much deeper than just your dad being a deadbeat, Your heritage is much, there's something much more powerful and much more, I would say, in dire need in the world that we live in today, under world ecological, racial, pandemic, and economic inequality. And, I know he already does a lot of very important work, but we could use his support in the undoing of the U.S. illegal occupation of Hawaii by giving this even a bigger platform. If you can be bothered for that. I know he's doing other shit, but I'm gonna say that either way because that's just the truth, and I don't lie. I know that's pretty non-existent in the West, but I don't do that. I shouldn't say I don't lie, but I don't misrepresent from my own self-interests reality. I'm probably saying some wrong things right now. I'm sure I got some people's names wrong, but I'm trying to say everything that I can in the most authentically true to the reality that I understand, to the benefit of all of the people of Earth. Not everybody will benefit from the end of this empire. Even American people that call themselves American now will benefit from the undoing of again. We have to go through the statistics. 45 times more malnutrition deaths in Vietnam. 1,000 times less more homelessness per capita than China. Lower life expectancies than Cuba. All the successful countries that model themselves on Hawaii, that I just said, are all doing better under the indigenous socialist civilizations. Indigenous led. They're all decolonized places, by the way. Cuba, Vietnam, China. All of these places are doing better than the United States. It would benefit the United States to undo its empire, support indigenous people, have indigenous-led socialist revolution in its country. It would benefit all of the 330 million people there, as it has everywhere else. People are scared because that's all that the descendants of the Roman trauma know to be is scared. Scared of white genocide, scared of what what anti-white racism will do to us, what black and indigenous and all of the women and gays will come for us, and they're all gonna come for me in the bathroom. They're all gonna get me. All the black people. You don't have to be scared. I know that's all you know how to be because your daddy also failed you because your daddy was an abusive white man, and you were a young white boy inside. You're a little scared white boy inside, and you don't. All you can be is scared and angry. But there's other things to be than that. There is brave. The reason why the Vietnamese won is not because they were mad, vicious people with toxic masculine bravado. The reason why the Vietnamese beat the Americans is because the Vietnamese were in the right. The Vietnamese had radical solidarity. The Vietnamese fought for their survival and their existence, and Americans fought for billionaires and for greed and out of fear and loathing of themselves. And they came back and then they did exactly what Keanu Reeves' father did, which is shoot up full of drugs and kill themselves. Because they knew who they actually were. And they knew their daddy beat them and said, you want to be a little pinko, gay, commie boy? get your ass out in that military and be a man. And then they joined that military, and then they did evil, and then they lost the war, and they were beaten by Vietnamese women and communists. They're beaten by indigenous people who had many times less funding and less advanced weapons and less technology and less total people. And America lost because that's not what wins war. And you can stop being a scared little Fox News watcher. You can stop being a little scared little MAGA Tucker Carlson, trying to look for the biggest, whitest man in the room and bow under him and lick his boot. You cannot be that anymore. You cannot be that anymore. That's not what real courage is. That's not what real strength is. Real strength was that Vietnamese woman that fucked you over. And not fucked you over, that kicked your fucking ass out of there. Popping out of a rice paddy. Why? Because she was defending the life of the land and her children and her people. And you were defending nothing. You stood for nothing. America still stands for nothing. And that's why America will lose any attempt to make a war on China. Because they stand for something. And you stand for nothing. You stand for the lie that is that flag. And, Keanu can assist us in standing for the people that the United States destroyed. The United States that harmed Hawaiians, that then led on to knock-on effects of Hawaii harming Keanu Reeves' his father, and then that knocked on to that harming Keanu. You can help us to do this. Anyways, so I've said many words. It's 2:08 already. Okay, I gotta get off because I gotta go do other things. Long story short, watch Matrix Resurrections. I think don't buy NFTs. That's what I meant to say. Don't buy no NFTs. No, really the core of it is even if it's not Keanu Reeves' grandma, I think part of why he is not canceled. He's one of the few people that still is in Hollywood, but is at least not being and doing terrible things and abusing people, at least as far as I can gather. If I find out that he is a motherfucker, you're going to have some Kanakamale to Kanakamale talk. You know what I'm saying? Keanu? Anyway, but no, I'm not going to talk. We're not going to have any talks because I don't have him on speed dial. But the part of the reason why he is the way that he is and he's still in things is because some of the Hawaiianness was I think some of the Hawaiianness and some of the actual aloha, not the thing they put on the side of the little pog cups that you drink in your Hawaiian Airlines $3.3 million a year cis white man owned airline. The actual aloha that goes deeper than some words on the side of a hotel for rich people to make more money abusing us. The actual aloha from that huis, from that great country that we were and are and will be continual as a great indigenous civilization. Some of that is in Keanu, I think. And that's part of it. And he should know that is what it is. And not to say that Chinese are not Hawaii. There is a particular thing about the Hawaii Chinese community that came to Hawaii. There's a reason why they went back and broke the chains from the largest country in the earth. And there are still people there. There are still people that are from that Hawaiian Chinese community that are still defending the water, like Ernie Lau. Trying their best to stop the water from being poisoned to this day. There are still people like Kumuhina, Hawaiian Chinese people, to this day, that are still carrying on the flame of what Hawaii was in the 1800s. And he should anyway. So that's my. I'm not Keanu Reeves' psychiatrist, so I can't tell you all these. I can't tell you all this, but that's what I think anyway. So, anyways. This is the end of the stream. I will be back with Luna Oi. I will be back with Professor Flowers, Luna Oi, and let me get all the people on the list here. I will be back with Luna Oi. I didn't make a flyer, but Luna, Danny Haifong, Professor Flowers, and Luna, Professor Flowers, Danny Haifong lost to our indigenous comrade from Canada, so-called Canada, and myself in about an hour, a little less than an hour. Neofeud is a cyberpunk adventure game. that is in the vein of Blade Runner with overlay of Game of Thrones like political intrigue. It's I already talked about it a lot in this stream, and now you know a little more about what's behind that game if you didn't before. Neofeud is a game that is not on sale right now, but if you want to wishlist it, tell anybody who might be interested. It is a cyberpunk game like Matrix, in the same kind of genre as Matrix, the Matrix. It is like Disco Elysium with cyberpunk characteristics if you like Disco Elysium. Neofeud is also a game that if you can leave a very short review of it, it is appreciated because it does help us to get the game seen in the algorithm by people who are browsing the Steam site. You can also find Neofeud on itch.io for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It's also on DRM. It's DRM free, and you can get it without installing Steam. It's also the maximum percentage of the revenue goes to us here at the Silver Spook Hui, which is a political, economic, personal, and spiritual, and a mental health, and physical health, and ecological action. It is all of these things. And if you want to support that, you can also become a Patreon member at patreon.com/Neofeud. When you become this, you can also get access to behind the scenes work that I'm doing on the games, like Neofeud 2 and Decolonators, which is coming out soon. A game I'm working on with Luna Oi. In fact, it's a game where you play a Vietnamese communist fighting American capitalist and imperialist invaders. And you can also get access to updates and support us in it. Oh, you get access to the Silver Spook Discord as well, and all the cool people there. When you become, you can also follow us at Silver Spook Games at Octodon.social on Mastodon. Mastodon is a decentralized, non-capitalist, federated, open-source social media platform like Twitter, but without billionaires, Wall Street, and the Pentagon and Silicon Valley deciding what you see and what you don't see. However, while I still have access to the Death Star satellites, you can follow at Silver Spook Guy for my personal account, and where I do things like basically dunk all over imperialism and the United States. And also you can follow Silver. I'm often like just retweeting stuff that Luna says and then like adding to it. Because what Luna says is very important for people to hear as well. And we can both share in frustration trying to deal with Western people. At Silver Spook Games, minus the E in Silver, is a site where you can find games-related stuff. Neofeud 1 when it goes on sale, Neofeud 2 updates, and other game stuff that I work on. Terminus C is Terminus Cyberstars account, which is another game I'm working on. Another cyberpunk low-poly game in the vein of Deus Ex and System Shock. Deus Ex is very Johnny Mnemonic-y. Speaking of Johnny Mnemonic, around that era, sort of similar plot actually. Giant mega corporation making a disease and then having exorbitantly priced treatments for it. Similar to Johnny Mnemonic. Anyways, similar to 2021. If you want to follow this is on Twitter and on it's on Twitter. And this is a game that's being made by a handful of folks. I'm the content director / lead designer on this game. Where you play a immigrant escapee from an ICE concentration camp, trying to run away from the police and get away from police and ICE, immigration and custom enforcement. And one of the main missions is called Universal Death Care, where you try to survive a U.S. like horrific medical structure. Anyways, and this is the game. If you want to follow that, it is coming out sometime in the near future, and you can follow at Terminus C. Join the Discord over there. Finally, thanks a lot to everybody for watching, and thanks Holly for, of course, always important moderation and maintaining our community, as well as other important care work and other work that Holly always is engaged in. Thanks to all these people as well: James Wheaton, Mixilla, Mischief Brewer, Big Teal, Ben. Oh crap! I can't say all these names, but thank you so much to all the people. It is greatly appreciated, and our newest supporter, Strin Sam. Thank you so much for the support. It is helps us do all the work we do, keep the house up, keep the lights on, electricity going, keeping everybody with all their needs being met, the cars running, having cars, and that we need to get places to get the food to eat, and also potentially expand the Silver Spook Hui to house and help and feed and have whole process healing for as many Native Hawaiians and other people that need all those things. Until next time, keep your mirror shades spotless. Be excellent to each other, and we'll see you in a little bit if you join us for the panel on Luna Oi's channel.